Some of the greatest mysteries of the ancient world are not hidden beneath the earth, they are standing in plain sight. Towering stone structures, vast ceremonial complexes, and strange carvings scattered across different continents continue to puzzle historians and archaeologists alike. Many of these sites were built thousands of years ago, yet their purpose, construction methods, and symbolic meanings remain only partially understood. Why did ancient civilizations invest so much effort into building monuments that would last for millennia? What knowledge guided their designs? And how was it passed down through generations? Each excavation reveals new clues, but also new questions. As research continues, these ancient monuments remind us that the story of human civilization is far from fully written. Zvartnots' circular nave is one of the most intriguing architectural structures of the ancient world, located within the ruins of Zvartnots Cathedral in Armenia, a monument built around the 7th century. Since its excavation in the early 20th century, this circular central space has astonished archaeologists and architectural engineers alike, as it reveals a level of design and construction that goes far beyond what is usually imagined about building technology of that era. Unlike most early Christian churches, which were typically constructed in elongated basilica forms or cross-shaped layouts, Zvartnots featured a massive circular central nave forming a complex concentric architectural system. This design made the entire structure resemble a multi-layered circular composition, where rings of columns and stone walls were arranged around a vast central space. According to architectural reconstructions, based on the surviving foundations, the circular nave of Zvartnots was once surrounded by a large system of stone columns, with many studies suggesting there were about 32 main columns. These columns were positioned along the circumference of the central circle, forming a structural system that supported the upper levels of the building. What is particularly remarkable is that the placement of these columns appears to have been calculated with extremely high geometric precision. When archaeologists measured the distances between the column bases, they found that the spacing was almost perfectly uniform, forming a circle that was remarkably accurate. In architecture, especially in circular structures, maintaining balance in load distribution is crucial. Even a small deviation in column placement could cause forces to be distributed unevenly, creating points of excessive stress and weakening the entire structure. For this reason, the precision with which the columns of the circular nave were positioned suggests that the builders of Zvartnots may have possessed highly refined geometric measurement techniques. Some scholars have suggested that this circular central space was once covered by a large dome. Based on architectural fragments and reconstruction models, the dome of Zvartnots may have risen to a height of around 40 meters or more. If this hypothesis is correct, the structure would have been one of the most impressive domed buildings of the 7th century. In dome construction, the compressive forces from the roof must be transferred downward into the supporting columns or walls, then distributed along the perimeter of the structure. This means that the circular nave of Zvartnots was not merely a decorative or symbolic religious element, but also a sophisticated engineering system designed to regulate structural forces throughout the building. The existence of such a large dome above a multi-tiered circular structure suggests that ancient architects may have had a surprisingly advanced understanding of load distribution in architecture, even without modern calculation tools. However, among all the remarkable aspects of Zvartnots, perhaps the feature that draws the greatest attention from modern researchers is the extraordinary precision of the basalt stone blocks used in the circular nave. Basalt is a volcanic rock that is extremely hard-heavy and difficult to shape. In many ancient civilizations, large buildings were often constructed with limestone or other softer stones because they were easier to cut and carve. Yet at Zvartnots, the builders appear to have used basalt for many key structural components. This immediately raises important questions about the construction technology of the time. When archaeologists carefully examined the surviving stones at the site, they discovered that many basalt blocks had been cut with astonishing accuracy. Their surfaces are almost perfectly flat. Their edges form clean angles, and when the blocks are placed together, the gaps between them are extremely small. In some cases, researchers have even observed that the blocks fit together so tightly that thick mortar layers were almost unnecessary to hold them in place. This indicates that the stones were carefully shaped to match each other precisely from the beginning. For a circular structure, like the circular nave, stone cutting becomes far more complex than in straight walls. Each block must be cut at an exact angle to follow the curve of the circle. If the angle of each stone were inaccurate, the circumference would gradually distort, causing the structure to lose its intended form. Yet when archaeologists reconstructed the ground plan of the circular nave, they found that the stone rings still maintained a remarkably accurate circular shape. This suggests that the builders not only cut stones to size, but also calculated the precise angles required for each block, so that when assembled, they would form a perfect circle. What makes this issue even more mysterious is the type of stone used. Basalt is significantly harder than many other common construction stones. Cutting and shaping basalt with ancient metal tools would have been an extremely difficult and time-consuming task. In the 7th century, metal tools were primarily made of wrought iron or early steel, far less advanced than modern cutting tools. Therefore, producing such flat stone surfaces, precise angles, and tightly fitted blocks at Zvartnots represents an astonishing technical achievement. It suggests that the builders not only possessed exceptional craftsmanship, but may also have used highly effective stoneworking methods that are still not fully understood today. Some hypotheses suggest that the builders may have used metal chisels combined with stone grinding techniques to achieve the required precision. Others propose that they may have relied on simple yet effective geometric measurement systems to ensure each block was cut to the correct dimensions and angles. However, no clear evidence has yet been found to confirm the exact process they used. This uncertainty makes the circular nave of Zvartnots a striking example of how ancient monuments can preserve sophisticated construction techniques that modern science has not yet completely explained. Today, most of Zvartnots survives only as ruins. The columns that once stood upright now lie scattered across the ground, and the circular nave, the very center of the entire structure, remains only as foundations and fragments of collapsed architecture. Many researchers believe that a powerful earthquake may have destroyed the building around the 10th century. Armenia lies within a seismically active region, and numerous ancient structures in the area have been damaged or destroyed by earthquakes throughout history. However, other theories suggest that the structure of Zvartnots may have been overly ambitious for the engineering capabilities of its time, especially if the central dome was truly as large as reconstruction models indicate. Whatever the true cause of its destruction may have been, Zvartnots remains one of the most impressive examples of creativity and ambition in ancient architecture. Its circular nave is not only a unique architectural feature, but also a testament to the remarkable technical abilities of builders who lived more than 1,000 years ago. And as archaeologists continue to study the precisely cut basalt blocks found at the site, one question continues to emerge. Have we truly understood the construction techniques of ancient builders? Or does the circular nave of Zvartnots still preserve secrets that modern science has yet to fully explain? How were builders in the 7th century able to cut and fit extremely hard basalt blocks with such remarkable precision? What techniques do you think they might have used? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Situated among the rugged, rocky landscapes of Bulgaria, Chit Kaya is one of the lesser-known archaeological locations that nevertheless hides remarkable mysteries about the technological abilities of the ancient world. From a distance, the site appears to be nothing more than an ordinary natural cliff. However, as one approaches the rock face, it becomes clear that the surface is not entirely untouched by human activity. Across the steep stone walls, numerous traces of carving appear, square-shaped niches with sharp edges and surprisingly precise geometry. These features look deliberately cut rather than naturally formed. What initially seems like a small detail gradually becomes the central mystery of the entire site. It is precisely these seemingly minor stone carvings that have turned Chit Kaya into a fascinating puzzle for archaeologists and researchers interested in ancient engineering techniques. How do you think ancient people managed to carve such perfectly shaped niches into a nearly vertical cliff face? Share your thoughts or theories in the comments below. Research suggests that the area may once have functioned as a type of rock sanctuary used by the Thracians, an ancient culture that inhabited large parts of the Balkan Peninsula long before the expansion of powerful civilizations such as Greece and Rome. The Thracians were known for religious rituals closely connected with nature. High places such as mountain peaks, cliffs, and elevated plateaus were often considered sacred locations where ceremonies could be performed closer to the divine. Chit Kaya, positioned high above the surrounding landscape and somewhat isolated from nearby settlements, fits well within this tradition. Yet what truly distinguishes the site is not only its location, but the remarkable precision of the carved rock features scattered across the cliff surface. Across several sections of the cliff face, deep niches have been carved directly into the rock. Some are nearly perfect squares, while others form elongated rectangular shapes. What makes them particularly striking is the straightness of their edges and the sharpness of their corners, features that do not resemble natural erosion or weathering. In many cases, the niches appear to have very similar dimensions, suggesting they may have been created according to a specific standard or design. When archaeologists examine them more carefully, they notice that these carvings were clearly not random. Instead, they often appear in clusters or in positions that seem deliberately planned along the rock face. The real mystery lies in the accuracy of the cuts themselves. In many ancient cultures, stone cutting typically leaves clear tool marks, rough surfaces, or irregular edges. Yet at Chit Kaya, some of the niches display relatively smooth surfaces and clean geometric lines. This raises an important question about the tools used to create them. If these carvings were indeed made during the Thracian period, the craftsmen would have been working with comparatively simple metal tools by modern standards, and yet the results suggest a surprising level of control and precision that challenges assumptions about ancient stoneworking techniques. Another factor that deepens the mystery is the position of many of these niches. Several are located on steep or nearly vertical sections of the cliff, sometimes at heights that appear difficult to reach. Today, accessing such locations would typically require climbing equipment or specialized gear. But in the ancient world, performing careful stone carving while standing on a vertical rock surface would have been an extremely demanding task. This raises a compelling question. How did ancient workers manage to reach these locations and maintain enough stability to carve such precise shapes into solid stone? One theory proposes that the niches once held wooden beams or structural elements. If so, the precisely carved cavities may have served as anchor points for a wooden construction that has long since disappeared. In several other Thracian archaeological sites across Bulgaria, researchers have discovered evidence of wooden structures attached to rock surfaces using similar carved holes or sockets. However, at Chit Kaya, there is no clear surviving trace of such structures. The absence of physical remains makes it difficult to confirm whether these niches truly supported architectural elements or served a different purpose entirely. Another interpretation suggests that the niches may have had a ritual or symbolic function. In many ancient cultures, sacred cliffs were used as places where statues, offerings, or ritual objects could be placed. The carefully carved niches at Chit Kaya may once have held sacred items connected to Thracian religious practices. If that were the case, the uniform dimensions of many niches might reflect ritual rules or symbolic architectural patterns that governed how such objects were displayed. Despite these theories, several aspects of the site remain difficult to explain. Some niches are significantly larger than others, and their arrangement does not always follow a clear pattern. The depths of the carvings also vary, which may indicate that they served multiple purposes. Some could have functioned as structural anchors, while others may have been intended for symbolic or ceremonial uses. Beyond the niches themselves, certain parts of the cliff appear to have been deliberately flattened. These surfaces do not resemble typical natural weathering patterns. Instead, they seem as though sections of the rock were intentionally smoothed or cut back to create relatively even planes. If this interpretation is correct, it suggests that the entire rock face may have been modified more extensively than it first appears. The location of Chit Kaya further adds to the intrigue. The site sits on elevated terrain, overlooking a wide valley. From this vantage point, large areas of the surrounding landscape are clearly visible. In many ancient cultures, elevated locations were associated with sacred spaces, places where people believed they could come closer to the realm of the gods. The expansive view from the cliff could have enhanced the ceremonial atmosphere of rituals performed there. Some researchers have also suggested that the niches might have played a role in astronomical observations. At several other Thracian sanctuaries, stone structures appear aligned with the position of the sun during significant moments of the year such as the summer or winter solstice. However, at Chit Kaya, there is currently no definitive evidence that the niches form such astronomical alignments. Nevertheless, the possibility continues to be explored by scholars interested in ancient skywatching practices. One of the most intriguing aspects of Chit Kaya is the lack of historical records describing the site. No surviving ancient texts clearly mention the rock sanctuary or explain its purpose. This absence of written documentation makes it difficult to determine the exact age of the carvings. While they are often associated with the Thracian period, it remains possible that some features were added during later historical eras. Without written sources, the site remains an open puzzle for archaeologists. All of these elements combine to make Chit Kaya a fascinating example of how small traces carved into stone can raise enormous questions about the past. The square niches on the cliff are not monumental structures like pyramids or temples, yet their precision and their placement in difficult-to-reach locations make them remarkable. They hint that ancient craftsmen may have possessed more refined stoneworking techniques than we typically assume. And even today, when standing before the rock face of Chit Kaya and looking into those carefully carved cavities, one question continues to echo through the minds of visitors and researchers alike. How were ancient workers, using relatively simple tools and working under extremely challenging conditions, able to carve such precise shapes into a nearly vertical cliff? Is it possible that we still do not fully understand the techniques they used, or is Chit Kaya merely the surviving fragment of a once more complex tradition of ancient engineering that has long since disappeared? Across the mountains of Kashmir, on a high plateau overlooking the vast green valley below, stand the silent remains of one of the most remarkable temples of the ancient Indian world. Today it is known as the ruined temple of Martand, or the Martand Sun Temple. Although time, conflict, and weather have reduced much of the complex to broken walls and scattered columns, the site still carries an unmistakable sense of grandeur. Massive stone blocks rise from the ground, forming the outlines of an architectural masterpiece that once dominated the landscape. Even in ruin, the temple continues to provoke curiosity among historians, archaeologists, and engineers who attempt to understand how such a structure could have been built more than 1,000 years ago. In your opinion, how were ancient builders able to construct a massive structure like the Martand Sun Temple on a remote plateau using stone blocks weighing several tons? Share your thoughts or theories in the comments below. The temple was constructed during the 8th century under the rule of King Lalitaditya Muktapada of the powerful Kakota dynasty. At that time, Kashmir was not an isolated mountain region, but an important cultural crossroads connecting Central Asia, the Indian subcontinent, and regions influenced by the Hellenistic world. The Martand Sun Temple was dedicated to Surya, the Hindu god of the sun, and was intended to be one of the most magnificent religious monuments of its era. Historical descriptions suggest that the complex once shone brightly with carefully carved stone, towering pillars, and a large central sanctuary that reflected the prestige of the kingdom that built it. Yet the most striking aspect of the Martand Sun Temple is not simply its religious purpose or its historical significance. What truly captures the attention of researchers is the extraordinary stone construction. The temple complex was built using massive blocks of limestone, some weighing several tons, which were cut and assembled with an astonishing level of precision. When examining the surviving walls closely, archaeologists have observed that many of the stones fit together so tightly that the joints between them are extremely thin. In some places, it is difficult to slide even a thin blade between the blocks. The stones appear to have been shaped carefully so that each one locks perfectly into place with its neighbors. This level of stonework raises a series of intriguing technical questions. Limestone is not the hardest stone in the world, but cutting large blocks with perfectly flat surfaces and precise angles still requires considerable skill and tools capable of producing consistent results. In an era long before modern power saws, industrial drills, or advanced measurement instruments, ancient builders somehow managed to shape these heavy stones into geometrically accurate components. The surfaces of the blocks appear surprisingly smooth, suggesting that the craftsmen used specialized carving techniques and possibly carefully controlled abrasives. Another challenge lies in the transportation of the stones. The temple sits on a raised plateau that overlooks the Kashmir Valley, and moving large blocks of stone to this location would have required careful planning. Each block had to be quarried-shaped, transported across uneven terrain, and lifted into its final position within the structure. Without cranes, trucks, or hydraulic machinery, the builders must have relied on sophisticated systems of manpower, wooden frameworks, ramps, and perhaps rolling logs or sledges. The coordination required to move and place stones weighing several tons is itself an engineering achievement. But perhaps the most remarkable aspect of the construction is the accuracy with which the stones were assembled. When looking at the remaining walls and pillars, it becomes clear that the builders were not merely stacking rocks. Instead, they created a carefully designed architectural system in which each block was shaped to match the others precisely. This allowed the stones to interlock and support one another structurally. Such precision would have required not only skilled stonecutters, but also architects capable of planning the dimensions and placement of each component in advance. The central temple once stood within a large rectangular courtyard, surrounded by a series of smaller shrines and columns. In total, more than 80 smaller cells are believed to have lined the perimeter of the complex, creating a grand colonnaded enclosure around the main sanctuary. The design demonstrates a clear understanding of symmetry and spatial organization. Visitors entering the temple complex would have passed through an imposing gateway before walking into a vast open courtyard, framed by rows of stone pillars. At the far end stood the central shrine, which once housed the sacred image associated with the sun god. The architectural style of the Martand Sun Temple is also unusual because it appears to combine elements from several different cultural traditions. Scholars have noted similarities between certain features of the temple and architectural styles found in Gandhara, a region historically influenced by Greek and Roman artistic traditions following the campaigns of Alexander the Great. Some arches and column designs show hints of classical influence, while other features remain deeply rooted in traditional Indian temple architecture. This mixture of styles suggests that the builders of Martand were part of a broader cultural exchange network, connecting multiple regions. The temple's orientation toward the rising sun adds another layer of fascination. Built on an elevated platform, the structure faces eastward across the valley. At sunrise, the first rays of light would have illuminated the temple complex, reinforcing its symbolic connection to the solar deity. Some researchers believe that the alignment of the temple may have been carefully calculated using observations of the sun's movement across the horizon. If this is true, it would indicate that the builders possessed not only architectural skill, but also knowledge of astronomy. Despite its grandeur, the temple did not survive intact through the centuries. Historical records suggest that it was damaged or destroyed during political and religious upheavals in the medieval period. Over time, earthquakes, weathering, and the reuse of stone by local populations contributed to the collapse of many parts of the structure. Today, what remains are fragments of towering walls, broken columns, and the outlines of the once majestic courtyard. Yet even in ruin, the Martand Sun Temple continues to inspire awe. Walking among the remaining stones, visitors can still sense the scale and ambition of the original construction. The surviving walls hint at a structure that must once have dominated the surrounding landscape, visible from great distances across the valley. The precision of the masonry remains evident even after centuries of exposure to wind and rain. For archaeologists and historians, the temple represents an important window into the technological capabilities of ancient Kashmir. It demonstrates that the engineers and craftsmen of the 8th century possessed highly advanced knowledge of stone construction. They were capable of planning large architectural complexes, shaping massive stones with precision and assembling them into stable structures that could endure for centuries. However, many questions remain unanswered. What exact tools did the builders use to achieve such smooth stone surfaces? How did they measure and align the stones with such accuracy? What engineering methods allowed them to transport and lift blocks weighing several tons onto elevated platforms? And how did they coordinate the labor required to complete such an ambitious project? These mysteries do not necessarily imply lost technology or forgotten machines, but they do highlight how sophisticated ancient engineering could be. The ruins of Martand remind us that the builders of the past were often far more skilled and innovative than modern assumptions sometimes suggest. Their achievements, carved into stone and aligned with the movement of the sun, continue to stand quietly in the mountains of Kashmir. Today, the ruined temple of Martand remains one of the most intriguing architectural sites in the region. Its massive stones, precise construction, and unique architectural blend continue to spark debate and fascination. Even after more than 1,000 years, the temple still poses a simple yet powerful question: how did ancient builders achieve such remarkable precision and scale with the tools available to them at the time? The answer may lie partly in lost techniques, partly in patient craftsmanship, and partly in the collective knowledge of generations of builders who understood stone structure and geometry at a profound level. Whatever the explanation may be, the ruins of Martand continue to stand as silent evidence of an ancient engineering tradition that remains deeply impressive even in the modern world. At the center of the monumental complex of Hampi, once the glorious capital of the Vijayanagara Empire, stands an architectural structure that continues to astonish archaeologists and modern engineers alike: the elephant stables. Built around the 15th century, this structure is believed to have served as the royal stables for war elephants, animals that played a crucial role in both the military and ceremonial life of the Vijayanagara Empire. However, when examined more closely, the elephant stables appear to be far more than a simple shelter for animals. The structure is a remarkable stone architectural achievement, displaying technical features that still raise questions among researchers today. The building consists of 11 large chambers connected in a long continuous row. Each chamber is topped by a massive stone dome. From a distance, the entire structure resembles a palace or ceremonial hall rather than a stable for animals. Tall, arched entrances open at the front of every chamber, large enough for a fully grown elephant to walk through with ease. Thick stone walls and a system of corridors at the rear indicate that the structure was carefully designed to serve both the elephants and their caretakers. Yet the feature that makes the elephant stables truly extraordinary and mysterious is the system of enormous stone domes rising above each chamber. The 11 domes of the elephant stables are not only large, but also constructed from carefully arranged stone blocks, fitted together with astonishing precision. When viewed from the front, it becomes clear that each dome has a distinct shape. Some are perfectly rounded in a classical form, others resemble onion-shaped domes associated with Persian architecture, and several feature stepped designs typical of traditional Indian styles. This diversity makes the entire structure appear like a collection of architectural traditions from different cultures. Yet the most remarkable aspect lies in how the stones forming the domes were assembled. The massive stone blocks were placed with such accuracy that the gaps between them are almost invisible. In many places, archaeologists have observed little to no evidence of binding mortar. This suggests that the stability of the domes relies primarily on the precise shape and placement of each stone block. This principle reflects the classical mechanics of dome construction, where gravity is distributed evenly across wedge-shaped stones. Achieving such structural balance, however, requires extremely careful calculation and craftsmanship. What puzzles researchers is that the elephant stables were built in a period when modern measuring tools and construction technologies did not exist. No detailed architectural blueprints have survived to explain how the builders of the Vijayanagara Empire designed and erected these massive domes. Yet the stones remain perfectly positioned, forming structures that have stood for more than 5 centuries. A major question emerges: how did the builders lift such heavy stones to the height of the domes? Some of the blocks are enormous and had to be positioned more than 10 meters above ground level. In an era without metal cranes or advanced pulley systems, raising stones of this size would have required highly effective engineering methods. One theory suggests that builders used long earthen ramps to drag the stones upward, but clear archaeological evidence for this method has not yet been discovered. Another aspect that makes the elephant stables extraordinary is the durability of its domes. Over centuries, the Hampi region has experienced intense monsoon rains, strong winds, and extreme temperature fluctuations. Furthermore, after the collapse of the Vijayanagara Empire following the Battle of Talikota, much of the city of Hampi was heavily damaged. Numerous temples and palaces were destroyed or gradually fell into ruin over time. Yet the elephant stables remain standing almost completely intact. Most notably, the stone domes still retain their original form. The long-lasting stability of these domes suggests that the builders possessed not only a basic understanding of dome architecture, but also a deep knowledge of weight distribution, stone fitting, and structural durability. Many modern engineers studying the monument acknowledge that the technical skill of Vijayanagara builders may have been far more advanced than commonly assumed for medieval construction. The variety of dome shapes introduces another intriguing mystery. Why would a structure believed to be a stable for elephants contain 11 domes with completely different designs? In many ancient architectural traditions, variations in structural design often carry symbolic or ceremonial meaning. It is possible that each chamber once housed a particularly important elephant, perhaps one associated with royal rituals or military prestige. Another possibility is that the variation simply reflects the creativity and technical experimentation of the architects who designed the building. Beyond the domes themselves, the elephant stables are notable for their unique fusion of architectural styles. The pointed arches at the front of the chambers resemble those commonly seen in Islamic architecture, while the decorative elements and overall layout reflect traditional Hindu design principles. This blend likely reflects a historical period in which the Vijayanagara Empire interacted extensively with different cultures through trade and political contact. However, this combination also raises intriguing questions. Did the builders adopt architectural techniques from distant regions such as Persia or Central Asia, or did they independently develop similar structural methods? The chambers of the elephant stables were built on a massive scale, large enough to house the enormous war elephants used by the royal army. In ancient India, elephants were an essential component of military strategy and royal ceremonies. Constructing a secure and spacious stable for such powerful animals was therefore a practical necessity. Yet the sophistication of the elephant stables suggests that the structure may have held a significance beyond that of a simple animal shelter. Today, when visitors stand before the elephant stables, the most striking feature is still the long sequence of stone domes rising along the entire length of the structure. They form a distinctive skyline that appears both powerful and elegant. Even after centuries of exposure to time and weather, these domes remain remarkably intact, almost as if they were completed only recently. For this reason, the elephant stables are not merely a historical monument, but also a powerful testament to the engineering skill and creativity of ancient builders. Despite decades of archaeological study, many questions remain unanswered. How exactly did Vijayanagara architects design and construct these enormous domes? How did they achieve such extraordinary precision in fitting the stone blocks together? And have we truly understood the full extent of their engineering knowledge? Even today, the great stone domes of the elephant stables continue to stand as a reminder that the architectural achievements of ancient civilizations may still hold secrets that modern science has yet to fully explain. Each stone seems to preserve the story of a civilization that reached remarkable levels of technical mastery, yet left behind very few records explaining how those achievements were accomplished. Could ancient engineers have possessed building techniques we still don't fully understand today? Tell us what you think in the comments below. Sayil's Great Palace facade is one of the most impressive and mysterious architectural fronts of the Maya civilization, located at the archaeological site of Sayil in the Puuc region of the Yucatan Peninsula, Mexico. The structure was built around the 9th century, during a period when Maya cities in the Puuc region were flourishing. At first glance, what astonishes archaeologists is not the sheer size of the building, but the extraordinarily complex stone mosaic facade that covers almost the entire upper portion of the structure. Thousands of small limestone blocks were carefully cut and assembled with remarkable precision, forming a massive geometric tapestry stretching more than 80 meters along the front of the palace. These patterns are far more than simple decoration. They create highly intricate repeating designs composed of diamond shapes, stepped motifs, geometric patterns, and especially the distinctive masks of the rain god Taq with his long, curved nose. When observed up close, each element of this enormous mosaic can be seen to consist of individual stones, each carved into a different shape so that it fits perfectly with the surrounding pieces. No two stones are exactly the same yet. When assembled together, they form a balanced and almost perfectly geometric composition. What makes the facade of Sayil's great palace particularly mysterious is the construction technology behind it. The Maya did not use metal tools during this period. Instead, they primarily worked the soft limestone of the Yucatan region, using harder stone tools such as obsidian or chert. However, when archaeologists closely examine the stones on the facade, they find that many edges were cut with extraordinary sharpness and accuracy, sometimes fitting together so tightly that it is nearly impossible to slide even a thin blade between the joints. Cutting thousands of small stones with such complex shapes would have required an exceptional level of technical control. This leads to a major question. How were Maya builders able to create such a large and intricate stone mosaic system without leaving behind any architectural drawings or construction plans for later generations? Some researchers suggest that Maya craftsmen may have used geometric measurement systems transmitted through oral tradition or marked directly onto the stones. Others propose that they may have used wooden or clay models to experiment with layouts before carving the actual stones. Yet so far, no direct evidence confirms exactly which methods were used. The architectural style of the palace belongs to the famous Puuc tradition of the Maya. A defining feature of this style is the clear division between the lower and upper portions of the facade. The lower section of the building is usually relatively plain and minimally decorated, while the upper section is densely covered with elaborate stone mosaics. This arrangement is not only aesthetic, but also reflects an astonishing understanding of structure and weight distribution. The complex decorative blocks are placed in the upper part of the wall, where their weight is evenly supported by the solid stone structure below. This suggests that Maya architects may have understood how to balance structural loads and maintain stability even without modern mathematical tools. Yet the question remains, were these calculations based purely on accumulated experience, or did the Maya possess a more advanced technical knowledge system that we have not yet fully understood? Inside the Great Palace lies an astonishing system of rooms. The building contains more than 90 small chambers, arranged along long corridors and central courtyards. The rooms are organized along nearly symmetrical axes, with doorways opening into long hallways that run parallel to the facade. This suggests that the palace was not merely a symbolic structure, but may also have served as the residence of elite members of society or as an important administrative center for the city of Sayil. Small windows and ventilation openings are placed along the walls, allowing air to circulate in the hot and humid climate of the Yucatan Peninsula. Some researchers believe that the Maya may have understood the principles of natural airflow in order to keep the interior spaces cooler. If this is true, the architecture of Sayil would demonstrate not only mastery of stone construction, but also a significant understanding of the surrounding environment and climate. Another important technical element of the structure is the Maya corbel vault system. Instead of constructing rounded arches like the Romans, Maya builders created vaults by stacking stones that gradually projected inward until the two sides met at the top. This method produced tall and narrow triangular vaults, yet remarkably these structures have survived for more than 1,000 years. This raises another intriguing question: what binding materials were used to hold the stones together? The Maya often used mortar made from burned limestone, but in many areas of Sayil, the stones appear to fit together so tightly that mortar may have played only a secondary role. The combination of precise stone placement and lime mortar created a structure capable of withstanding both time and harsh environmental conditions. The masks of the rain god Taq appear repeatedly across the facade of the palace, forming one of the most recognizable features of Puuc architecture. The long, curved noses of Taq are assembled from multiple stone blocks, creating prominent sculptural forms that project outward from the wall. Archaeologists believe that the repeated depiction of the rain god was not accidental. The Puuc region has almost no major rivers, and ancient inhabitants depended heavily on rainwater storage systems called chultuns to survive. For this reason, the rain god Taq held an extremely important place in the religious life of the Maya at Sayil. However, some researchers have also proposed that these masks may have served an architectural function, helping distribute structural forces or conceal key joints within the stone walls. If this idea is correct, it would suggest that religious symbolism and engineering design in Maya architecture were far more closely integrated than previously believed. The location of Sayil itself presents another major mystery. The city flourished in a region without large natural water sources. Constructing a massive structure like the Great Palace would have required enormous amounts of labor materials and water for carving limestone and producing lime mortar. How were the Maya able to sustain such a large construction project in such a dry environment? Archaeologists have discovered numerous artificial water reservoirs throughout the area, yet it remains unclear whether this system could have provided enough water for both the city's population and large-scale building activities. Finally, when examining the overall facade of Sayil's Great Palace, many researchers have noticed that the geometric patterns across its surface do not appear entirely random. The repeating motifs create complex symmetrical structures that sometimes suggest mathematical principles or elements of Maya cosmology. Some theories propose that these patterns may reflect concepts related to astronomy cycles of time, or the cosmic order as understood by the ancient Maya. However, to this day, the true meaning behind many of these patterns has not been fully deciphered. Sayil's Great Palace facade is therefore far more than the decorative front of an ancient palace. It stands as a testament to the fusion of art, religion, mathematics, and engineering in Maya civilization. Thousands of small stones assembled into a monumental mosaic have endured for more than a millennium, challenging modern researchers to understand how an ancient society achieved such a high level of precision and complexity. And despite the many theories proposed, the central question still remains: how were the Maya, with tools that appear simple and limited by modern standards, able to create one of the most refined stone facades of the ancient world? Is it possible that we still do not fully understand the technical knowledge they once possessed, or does Sayil still hold secrets that time has not yet allowed us to uncover? Do you think the Maya possessed construction knowledge that we still do not fully understand today? Share your thoughts in the comments below. The ruins of Raqchi Archaeological Site are among the most intriguing archaeological remains of the ancient Inca civilization. Located high in the Andes of southern Peru, this vast complex has puzzled historians and engineers alike because of its unusual architecture, enormous scale, and technical sophistication. Unlike many other Inca sites that follow familiar construction patterns, Raqchi displays a combination of design choices and engineering techniques that appear almost experimental. At the center of the site stands the massive temple of Viracocha, surrounded by long rows of storehouses, residential areas, terraces, and an advanced water management system that continues to raise questions about the true capabilities of Inca engineers. While scholars have proposed various explanations for the purpose of the complex, many details of its construction and function remain difficult to fully explain, leaving Raqchi as one of the most mysterious architectural achievements of the ancient Andes. The most prominent structure within the ruins is the enormous temple dedicated to the creator deity Viracocha. The central wall of this temple once rose more than 12 meters high and stretched nearly 90 meters in length, making it one of the largest known buildings constructed by the Inca. What makes the temple particularly unusual is the way it was built. The lower portion of the wall is composed of finely cut stone blocks that fit together with remarkable precision, a hallmark of Inca stone masonry. Yet the upper portion was constructed from massive adobe bricks, a much softer material. This combination of carefully shaped stone foundations and towering adobe walls is rare in Inca architecture and has led researchers to question why the builders would combine two materials with such different structural properties. Some scholars believe that the design may have supported a vast roof structure made from wood and thatch, but the original roof has long since vanished, leaving archaeologists to speculate about how such a large structure could have been supported and what its interior might have looked like. Surrounding the temple are long rows of circular buildings known as kulkas, which served as storage facilities for the Inca state. At Raqchi, there are more than 100 of these circular storehouses arranged in orderly lines across the landscape. Their sheer number suggests that the site may have played an important logistical role within the Inca Empire, possibly functioning as a regional distribution center where food, textiles, and other resources were collected and redistributed. The circular design of these buildings was not random. Their shape helped regulate airflow, preserving stored goods by reducing humidity and preventing spoilage. Even today, the precision with which these structures were arranged demonstrates a remarkable level of planning and organization. However, the scale of storage capacity at Raqchi still raises questions. If the site was primarily a religious center dedicated to Viracocha, why would it require such an enormous network of storehouses? Some researchers suspect that the location may have served multiple purposes, at once blending ceremonial functions with economic and administrative roles. Yet perhaps the most astonishing and mysterious feature of the Raqchi complex is its water management system. Throughout the ruins runs an intricate network of stone-lined canals that carried water through the settlement with extraordinary accuracy. These channels were carefully carved and aligned so that water could flow smoothly from higher elevations down through the site without eroding the surrounding structures. The stones forming the canals were cut and fitted with such precision that the channels still guide water efficiently centuries after the civilization that built them disappeared. Engineers who have studied the system note that the gradients of these canals are remarkably consistent, maintaining just the right slope to keep water moving steadily without overflowing or stagnating. Achieving this level of hydraulic precision would be challenging, even with modern measuring tools, yet the Inca accomplished it using simple instruments and techniques that remain only partially understood. The mystery deepens when considering the tools available to the Inca. Unlike many ancient civilizations, they did not use iron or steel tools, nor did they employ wheeled vehicles for transporting heavy materials. Despite these limitations, the builders of Raqchi managed to create channels that follow carefully calculated inclines across uneven terrain. The canals connect different parts of the settlement, supplying water to residential areas, agricultural terraces, and ceremonial spaces. In some places, the channels run through precisely carved stone basins that may have served ritual purposes, suggesting that water held both practical and symbolic significance at the site. The combination of hydraulic engineering and religious architecture hints at a deeper understanding of environmental management and spiritual symbolism. Some researchers believe that the water system may have been designed not only for practical use, but also as part of ceremonial rituals linked to Viracocha, the deity associated with creation and cosmic order. Flowing water may have represented life renewal and divine presence within the sacred landscape. Others suggest that the canals functioned as an early form of urban infrastructure, distributing water efficiently across the complex while preventing flooding during heavy rains in the Andes. What remains striking is how accurately the system was constructed. The angles, depths, and alignments of the canals demonstrate a sophisticated knowledge of fluid dynamics and terrain mapping, even though the Inca left behind no written technical manuals explaining how they achieved such results. In addition to its hydraulic system, Raqchi reveals evidence of careful urban planning. Residential compounds, ceremonial plazas, and storage areas were arranged in a structured layout, connected by roads that once linked the site to the wider network of the Inca Empire. The nearby Inca road system, part of the famous Capacnan, allowed travelers and administrators to move quickly across the empire's vast mountainous territories. Raqchi's strategic location along this network further supports the idea that the complex may have served as both a spiritual center and a logistical hub. Still, the scale of its infrastructure suggests that its role may have been even more significant than historians currently understand. Today, the ruins stand quietly against the dramatic Andean landscape, their massive walls and carefully carved canals continuing to inspire curiosity. Despite decades of archaeological research, many aspects of Raqchi remain uncertain. How did Inca engineers calculate the precise gradients required for their water channels? What techniques allowed them to align and carve stones so accurately without modern instruments? And why did they construct such an enormous temple using a hybrid architectural style rarely seen elsewhere in their empire? These unanswered questions are part of what makes the Raqchi Inca ruins so captivating. The site reveals a civilization capable of extraordinary engineering achievements while still leaving behind mysteries that challenge modern understanding. The precise water channels that still guide water through the ruins today serve as silent evidence of a sophisticated knowledge system that has not been fully decoded. Standing among these ancient stones, it becomes clear that Raqchi was far more than a simple temple complex. It was a carefully designed environment where architecture, logistics, religion, and hydraulic engineering merged into a single monumental landscape, one whose full story may still lie hidden beneath the stones and flowing water of the Andes. In your opinion, how were the Inca able to build such an incredibly precise water canal system when they had no modern metal tools or advanced measuring instruments? Was it simply the result of experience and careful observation of nature, or did the Inca possess engineering knowledge that we still do not fully understand today? Share your thoughts in the comments below. The Sahasralinga river carvings represent one of the most unusual and visually striking archaeological landscapes in India. Hidden within the rocky bed of the Shalmala River in the Indian state of Karnataka, this remarkable site reveals itself only when the water level drops during the dry season. As the river recedes, thousands of carved symbols gradually emerge from the stone surface, covering large stretches of the riverbed. These carvings are primarily representations of Shiva lingams, the sacred symbol associated with the Hindu god Shiva. The name Sahasralinga itself comes from Sanskrit and literally means 1,000 lingams. Yet the reality may be even more extraordinary, as surveys suggest that the number of carvings across the riverbed could reach several thousand or more. When seen from above, the site appears almost like a vast sacred map etched into stone, giving the impression of a monumental temple complex that has been partially concealed beneath flowing water for centuries. What immediately captures the attention of visitors and researchers alike is the remarkable consistency of the carvings. Many of the lingams appear nearly identical in size and shape, each carved with a circular top and accompanied by a rectangular or oval yoni base designed to channel flowing water. In Hindu ritual symbolism, water flowing over a lingam represents purification and devotion, and the design of Sahasralinga seems to incorporate this concept directly into the natural environment. The river itself effectively becomes part of the ritual system. As water flows over the stone surface, it passes through the carved yoni channels, creating the impression that the river is continuously performing an act of sacred ablution. This integration between religious symbolism and natural water flow suggests that the creators of the site had a deep understanding not only of spiritual traditions, but also of the physical behavior of the river itself. However, beyond the symbolic meaning of the carvings lies a deeper and more puzzling question: how exactly were these carvings created in such an environment? The majority of the lingams are not located on dry rock outcrops along the riverbanks, but directly on the stone floor of the riverbed. This means that during much of the year, especially during the monsoon season, the carvings remain submerged beneath moving water. The Shalmala River is not a static environment. Its water levels fluctuate dramatically between dry and rainy seasons. During periods of heavy rainfall, the current can become strong and unpredictable, making the riverbed a difficult and dangerous place for any form of precise manual work. Yet despite these conditions, the lingams appear carefully shaped and evenly carved, suggesting a deliberate and controlled carving process. This leads to one of the most fascinating technical mysteries of Sahasralinga: the challenge of stone carving within a river environment. Ancient craftsmen would have faced several major obstacles while working in such a location. First, there is the issue of water itself. Even during dry seasons, sections of the river may still carry shallow currents, meaning the stone surface would remain wet and slippery. Maintaining stable footing while striking stone with metal tools would have required careful positioning and possibly specially prepared working platforms. Some researchers have proposed that ancient builders might have temporarily diverted sections of the river's flow. Simple stone barriers or earthen embankments could potentially have redirected water away from certain areas of the riverbed, allowing workers to carve in relatively dry conditions for limited periods of time. Although there is currently no direct archaeological evidence for such structures at Sahasralinga, similar temporary water management techniques are known to have existed in other ancient engineering projects. Another challenge involves the hardness of the rock itself. The carvings at Sahasralinga are made primarily in basalt and other hard igneous stone formations. Basalt is significantly harder than many sedimentary stones commonly used in ancient monuments, meaning that carving it requires durable tools and considerable effort. The grooves and circular shapes visible in the lingams suggest the use of iron chisels or similar metal implements capable of cutting into dense rock surfaces. However, working with such tools in a riverbed environment introduces additional complications. Water could quickly dull metal tools or interfere with precise hammer strikes. Despite these difficulties, many lingams display surprisingly smooth contours and consistent proportions. This indicates that the craftsmen responsible for the carvings possessed a high level of skill and experience in stoneworking techniques. Equally intriguing is the apparent organization of the carvings across the riverbed. At first glance, the lingams may seem randomly scattered, but closer inspection reveals patterns in their placement. Some clusters appear arranged in lines that follow the direction of the river's natural current, while others form groups around larger rock formations that rise above the surrounding surface. This suggests that the creators of Sahasralinga may have intentionally selected specific areas of the riverbed for carving based on both religious symbolism and the physical characteristics of the stone landscape. Large, stable rock surfaces would have provided ideal platforms for carving, while natural channels in the stone could guide water flow across the finished lingams. The scale of the project also raises important questions about labor and time. If carving a single lingam required several hours, or possibly an entire day, then producing thousands of carvings would represent an enormous investment of labor. Such a project would likely require a coordinated effort involving many craftsmen working over extended periods of time. It is possible that the site was developed gradually over decades, with new carvings added by successive generations of artisans and devotees. Alternatively, the carvings may have been commissioned during a specific historical period, under the patronage of regional rulers or religious institutions seeking to create a monumental sacred site. Unfortunately, written records describing the construction of Sahasralinga are extremely limited, leaving archaeologists to reconstruct its history largely through stylistic analysis and regional historical context. Another striking aspect of the Sahasralinga carvings is the way they merge seamlessly with the natural environment. Unlike temples built from transported stone blocks, these carvings were created directly within the existing geological landscape. The riverbed itself becomes both the foundation and the canvas for the sacred imagery. This approach reflects a philosophical perspective common in many ancient cultures where natural landscapes were viewed as sacred spaces, rather than merely locations for human construction. By carving lingams directly into the rock beneath the flowing river, the builders effectively transformed the Shalmala River into a living ritual environment. The continuous movement of water over the carvings reinforces the spiritual symbolism associated with purification, renewal, and divine presence. Even today, the site continues to inspire curiosity among visitors, historians, and archaeologists. When the river recedes and the carvings become visible, the scene can appear almost surreal. Thousands of carefully shaped lingams emerging from the stone surface like an ancient message revealed by the retreating water. Yet despite decades of observation and study, many fundamental questions remain unanswered. How did ancient craftsmen coordinate such a large-scale carving project within an unpredictable river environment? What methods did they use to manage water flow while working on the stone surface? Were the carvings produced within a relatively short historical period, or did they accumulate gradually over centuries as part of an evolving ritual tradition? The Sahasralinga river carvings therefore represent far more than a collection of religious symbols. They embody a complex interaction between spirituality, landscape, and engineering. The technical challenge of carving hard basalt stone directly within a riverbed suggests a level of planning and practical knowledge that deserves deeper study. At the same time, the symbolic integration of flowing water and sacred imagery reveals how ancient communities may have perceived their natural environment as part of a living religious system. Today, as researchers continue to explore the site and document its features, Sahasralinga remains one of the most fascinating and enigmatic archaeological wonders of South Asia, a place where art devotion and ancient engineering converge within the flowing waters of a river that has shaped the landscape for centuries. In the ancient world, certain structures astonish not only because of their scale, but also because of a level of technical precision that seems to exceed what we would normally expect from that era. One of the lesser-known, yet intriguing examples lies in the ancient Egyptian city of Heliopolis, one of the most important religious centers of the Nile civilization. This city was once the primary center, dedicated to the worship of the sun god Ra, and within its vast temple complex, there is believed to have existed a remarkable structure that researchers refer to as the hexagonal courtyard of Heliopolis. What makes this courtyard unusual is not towering columns or monumental size like many other Egyptian temples. Instead, the most striking feature is the geometry of the entire structure, and especially the astonishing precision with which the stone blocks were cut and joined together to create a hexagonal layout. In a civilization whose architecture is typically known for straight-axis square courtyards and rectangular halls, the presence of a nearly perfect hexagonal design has caused many archaeologists to pause and ask an important question: why did the Egyptians choose this geometry? And more importantly, how were they able to build it? In modern geometry, a regular hexagon is a shape with 6 equal sides and 6 equal angles, each measuring exactly 120 degrees. On paper, constructing such a shape is relatively simple, but when translated into architecture, where each side may extend dozens of meters and is formed from massive stone blocks weighing several tons. Maintaining that geometric precision becomes extremely difficult. Even a small deviation in one corner could cause the entire structure to lose its balance and symmetry. This brings us to the most intriguing aspect of the structure: the precision of the stone cutting and fitting. The stone blocks believed to form this courtyard were not simply placed side by side in the familiar straight walls typical of Egyptian construction. Instead, they appear to have been cut at very specific angles, allowing them to interlock in a polygonal configuration. In some cases, the edges of the stones meet in complex joints, where a single block must fit precisely with 2 or 3 neighboring stones simultaneously. This means that every block had to be crafted with extremely high precision before it was placed in its final position. Another remarkable detail is that these stones seem to have been assembled with very little mortar. In many ancient structures, mortar is used to compensate for small irregularities when stones are fitted together. Here, however, the edges of the blocks are described as fitting so tightly that almost no visible gaps remain. This suggests that the ancient builders were not only cutting stones to precise dimensions, but were also adjusting each angle of contact so that the blocks would meet perfectly. Considering the technological context of ancient Egypt, this raises several questions. The common tools available at the time were mainly copper tools, hard stone implements, and later some metal alloys. Cutting limestone might have been manageable, but producing identical angles repeatedly across massive blocks of stone would still have required a highly controlled and consistent process. Researchers have attempted to reconstruct how such work might have been done using traditional techniques. One hypothesis suggests that Egyptian builders may have used tight measuring cords, fixed stakes, and geometric circles to determine the positions of the corners. When a circle is divided into 6 equal segments, the resulting points naturally form a perfect hexagon. Yet translating a geometric layout, made with cords on the ground, into stone blocks, cut with precise angles, remains a challenging technical step. Another possibility is that the stones were carefully marked before being cut, and that stoneworkers used chisels and grinding tools to gradually adjust each edge until it matched the surrounding blocks perfectly. Such a process would require extremely careful coordination among multiple teams of craftsmen, because even a deviation of a few millimeters in one stone could prevent the next blocks from fitting correctly. This becomes even more impressive when we consider that many of these stones could weigh several tons. Moving, rotating, and placing them into their final positions would not have been easy. Once a heavy stone was lowered into place, adjusting the angles afterward would have been extremely difficult. This suggests that most of the precision had to be achieved during the initial carving stage. Some archaeologists have also noted the consistency of the angles between the blocks. If the structure truly formed a regular hexagon, each corner would need to approach 120 degrees. Repeating this angle across multiple sections of stone implies that the builders may have used a standardized system for measuring angles. However, there is still no clear evidence describing what type of precise angular measuring tool might have been used. The precision of the stone cutting and assembly may also have had structural benefits. When stones fit tightly together, their weight is distributed more evenly, increasing the stability of the entire structure and allowing it to endure for centuries. This principle is visible in many ancient constructions, but in the case of the hexagonal courtyard, the level of precision appears particularly striking. This has led some researchers to ask intriguing questions. Could the builders of this courtyard have possessed a deeper understanding of geometry than we usually attribute to ancient Egyptian construction? Or were these techniques actually common knowledge among specialized craftsmen, simply rarely recorded in surviving texts. Another factor deepening the mystery is the absence of detailed documentation about the structure. In many Egyptian temples, walls are covered with inscriptions describing religious rituals, historical events, or royal achievements. Yet there appear to be no surviving texts explaining how a hexagonal courtyard like this was designed or constructed. As a result, the courtyard remains an architectural puzzle. We can observe the finished outcome stone blocks fitted together with remarkable precision, but the technical process behind it is still not fully understood. Because Heliopolis was the central cult site of the sun god Ra, some scholars have speculated that the hexagonal shape may have had a connection to solar symbolism or astronomical cycles. One hypothesis proposes that the sides of the courtyard might once have aligned with particular solar directions during certain times of the year. However, evidence supporting this idea remains limited. For this reason, the greatest mystery of the hexagonal courtyard of Heliopolis lies not in its size or grandeur, but in the extraordinary technical precision of its stonework. Ancient craftsmen cut the blocks at complex angles, fitted them together with near-perfect accuracy, and created a geometric structure rarely seen in Egyptian architecture. Thousands of years have passed since the courtyard was constructed. The tools, plans, and methods used by its builders have largely disappeared with time. What remains are the stones themselves, still fitting together with striking precision. And that is what continues to make researchers wonder: how were ancient craftsmen able to cut and assemble multi-ton stone blocks with such geometric accuracy? What measuring techniques allowed them to maintain the precise angles required for a large hexagonal structure? Or perhaps the technical knowledge of ancient builders was far more sophisticated than we usually imagine. How do you think ancient builders managed to cut and assemble massive stone blocks with such precise angles? Tell us your theory in the comments below. Located on the rocky slopes north of the city of Cusco, near the ancient fortress complex of Sacsayhuaman, the Temple of the Moon has long been considered one of the most mysterious ceremonial sites of the Inca civilization. Unlike many ancient temples built from carefully assembled stone blocks, the Temple of the Moon exists in a very different architectural form. Its entire ritual space was carved directly into the natural rock of a large cave. Stone platforms, niches, ritual channels, and flat surfaces are all part of the mountain's original bedrock. This unique characteristic makes the structure one of the most remarkable examples of Inca stoneworking, while also raising a major question that still remains unanswered today: what tools did the Inca use to create such precise features inside a massive block of natural rock? If the ancient Inca did not have steel tools or modern machinery, how do you think they managed to carve such precise altars, niches, and channels directly into solid rock inside the Temple of the Moon? Share your thoughts and theories in the comments below. I'd love to hear what you think. When entering the Temple of the Moon, one of the first noticeable details is that the stone surfaces no longer retain the rough and irregular appearance typical of natural caves. Instead, many areas have been flattened, smoothed, and shaped in a systematic way. Some of the stone walls inside the cave have relatively smooth surfaces, enough for the faint light entering from the cave opening to softly reflect off them. Deep niches have been carved into the rock walls with fairly consistent dimensions. The ritual stone platforms are shaped into multiple levels, resembling large ceremonial altars carved directly from the cave floor. All these details suggest that the stoneworking here was not random, but rather the result of a carefully controlled and deliberately planned process of craftsmanship. What makes the Temples of the Moon particularly extraordinary is that all these architectural features were created directly from the solid bedrock of the cave itself. No separate stone blocks were transported from elsewhere. There are no visible joints, like those found in the famous Inca stone walls of Cusco. Instead, ancient craftsmen had to cut, carve, and grind the very rock of the mountain to shape the ceremonial space. This means they worked in a challenging environment, dim lighting, limited space, and naturally uneven stone surfaces. Despite these limitations, they managed to produce relatively flat surfaces, defined edges, and narrow channels carved along the stone platforms. These carved channels are among the details that have attracted particular attention from researchers. They often display fairly consistent depth and width running along controlled curves or straight lines. Some of these grooves appear to have been designed to guide liquids flowing in a specific direction, possibly related to sacrificial ceremonies or ritual practices. However, carving such channels into stone would have required precise control of tools. This leads to one of the central questions. In archaeological discussions, what tools did the Inca use to perform this work? Based on current understanding, the Inca did not possess steel and did not use iron in the same way that many later civilizations did. Most of their tools were made from hard stone copper or copper alloys. Stone hammers could have been used to strike and break rough rock surfaces. Copper tools may have been used to scrape or chisel softer stone sections. Additionally, some researchers suggest that the Inca might have used diorite or other extremely hard stones to pound and shape larger rock formations. In many cases, stoneworking may not have relied solely on direct impact, but also on long-term abrasion techniques, using sand and water as natural grinding materials. If this hypothesis is correct, the smooth surfaces inside the Temple of the Moon may have been the result of a very long and gradual process. Craftsmen could have repeatedly ground the rock surfaces using hard stone tools and abrasive sand for days or even months. Over time, this process might slowly flatten and polish the rock until the desired shape was achieved. However, when researchers closely examine the surfaces inside the cave, they often find that clear grinding marks are difficult to identify. Some areas appear evenly polished with almost no visible traces of the tools that created them. This detail has made the Temple of the Moon the subject of many debates. If the Inca truly used only simple tools made of stone and copper, producing such smooth surfaces and consistent channels inside a cave would have required an extraordinary level of skill, patience, and craftsmanship. While this is certainly possible, it suggests that Inca stoneworking techniques may have been far more advanced than commonly imagined. Some researchers even question whether there might have been specialized stoneworking methods that have been lost over time, making it difficult for modern researchers to fully reproduce the techniques used by the Inca. Beyond the question of tools, the working environment inside the cave is also worth considering. Unlike outdoor stone structures, where craftsmen could work under full sunlight with ample space, the Temple of the Moon lies within a natural cave where lighting conditions are limited. This means the stoneworking process had to be carried out under much more difficult circumstances. Craftsmen may have relied on torches or the faint natural light entering from the cave entrance. Even with such lighting, creating flat surfaces and precise grooves would still have required careful concentration and exceptional skill. Another feature that makes the Temple of the Moon remarkable is the way the Inca combined the natural shape of the cave with carefully carved architectural elements. Rather than completely reshaping the cave, they appear to have adapted existing rock formations. A section of rock wall might be smoothed into a ceremonial platform. A protruding rock mass could be transformed into a ritual altar. This integration of natural geology and human craftsmanship created a space that feels both organic and deliberately designed. Despite the many theories proposed, the question of what tools were actually used in the Temple of the Moon still does not have a completely certain answer. Did the Inca rely solely on simple stone and copper tools, but apply them with extraordinary expertise? Did they develop refined grinding techniques that modern researchers still do not fully understand? Or were there specialized stoneworking methods that disappeared with the civilization itself? Standing inside the cave and observing the carefully shaped stone surfaces, it is difficult not to wonder how an ancient civilization without modern machinery could transform a massive natural rock formation into such a complex ceremonial space. For this reason, the Temple of the Moon is not only an important archaeological site in the Andes, but also a reminder that the technological history of ancient civilizations may be far more complex than we often assume. The carved stone surfaces deep within this cave continue to pose a fascinating question for researchers. What tools and techniques allowed the Inca to accomplish such an extraordinary feat of stone engineering? Until that question is fully answered, the Temple of the Moon will remain one of the most intriguing technological mysteries of the ancient world. Hidden within the Teutoburg forest in western Germany, the sandstone rock formation known as Externstein has long been regarded as one of the most mysterious and intriguing archaeological sites in Europe. Towering stone pillars, some rising nearly 40 meters high, emerge from the ground like natural stone towers. For thousands of years, these rocks have attracted human attention, possibly because of their unusual shapes or their striking presence in the surrounding landscape. On one of the steep rock faces of this formation, researchers discovered a massive relief carved directly into the stone, now known as the Externstein reliefs. It is not only a remarkable religious artwork, but also a technical mystery that has raised many questions among archaeologists, art historians, and modern engineers. The most famous relief at Externstein depicts the scene of the descent from the cross, the moment when the body of Jesus is taken down from the crucifix. The carving stands nearly 5 meters tall and is cut directly into the surface of a vertical sandstone rock. According to many studies, the relief may have been created around the 12th century during the medieval period when Christianity had already become the dominant religion in the region. However, even if this dating is accepted, many technical aspects of the artwork continue to astonish researchers. Unlike many stone sculptures that were created on separate blocks of stone that could be placed horizontally in a workshop, the Externstein reliefs were carved directly into a tall and almost vertical rock face. This means the artisans had to work under extremely difficult conditions, possibly standing on scaffolding or temporary platforms while carrying out the carving. One of the remarkable aspects of the relief is the balanced arrangement of its figures, despite the fact that the stone surface is far from flat. The figures surrounding the cross are organized in a visually stable structure, creating a sense of balance across the entire composition. What makes this even more impressive is that the natural rock surface at Externstein contains numerous irregularities and natural ridges. Yet the craftsmen appear to have carefully planned the composition in advance, transforming these natural features into part of the design. This suggests that measurements and preliminary planning may have been carried out before the carving began. However, archaeologists have not discovered clear traces of guiding grids, layout marks, or preliminary sketches on the rock surface. This absence raises an intriguing question. Did the craftsmen use a special method of measurement whose traces have disappeared over time? Or did they possess a level of practical skill that allowed them to carve directly into the rock with extraordinary precision? The most astonishing aspect of the Externstein reliefs, however, is the technique of carving multiple layers of depth. From a distance, the relief appears similar to a typical raised stone carving, but when examined more closely, it becomes clear that the rock surface has been worked at several different levels to create a strong three-dimensional effect. Some details are carved only shallowly, just enough to outline shapes or suggest smaller elements of the scene. Other areas, especially the central figures and the cross, are carved much more deeply. The background behind the figures has also been cut away significantly, allowing the foreground figures to stand out more dramatically. This creates the visual impression that the figures are emerging from the rock itself. This multi-layer carving technique required an extremely high level of control. Sandstone, the rock that forms Externstein, is relatively softer than stones like granite, but its grain structure can fracture easily if struck incorrectly. When carving deeply into sandstone, the artisan must carefully calculate each strike of the chisel. If the force is too strong or the angle is incorrect, large sections of stone could crack and break away, potentially destroying parts of the entire composition. In a relief as large as the Externstein carving, even a small mistake could ruin the carefully planned structure of the artwork. What is particularly remarkable is the smooth transition between the different depth layers within the relief. There are no clear signs of corrections or adjustments during the carving process. The rock surfaces appear to have been removed layer by layer in a systematic way, almost as if the craftsman had a fully developed plan before they even began carving. This leads to an important question for modern researchers: how could the artisans visualize the precise three-dimensional structure of the entire relief while working directly on a massive vertical rock face? In modern sculpture, artists often create preliminary models in clay or plaster in order to determine the exact proportions and depths of each detail before carving the final stone. However, in the case of the Externstein reliefs, no archaeological evidence suggests that such models ever existed. If medieval craftsmen truly worked directly on the rock without reference models, it would indicate an extraordinary level of spatial imagination and technical skill. Another factor that complicates the mystery of this multi-layer technique is the location of the relief itself. The rock surface on which the artwork is carved is relatively high and not easy to access. When the craftsmen needed to carve deeply into the stone to create these layered effects, they had to stand very close to the surface they were working on. This implies the existence of a strong and carefully constructed scaffolding system that could support prolonged work at height. However, archaeologists searching the site have found very limited evidence of holes for wooden beams or anchor points that would normally support such scaffolding. This has led some researchers to wonder whether the scaffolding structures were completely removed without leaving traces, or whether the builders employed a construction method that is not yet fully understood today. The location of Externstein itself adds another layer of mystery to the relief. Some researchers believe that these rock formations may have been considered sacred long before the Christian relief was carved. Ancient Germanic communities may have used this site for ritual or spiritual purposes centuries before the creation of the medieval carving. If this hypothesis is correct, the Externstein reliefs may not represent the beginning of human activity at the site, but rather a later historical layer added to a location that had already been regarded as sacred for generations. Today, the Externstein reliefs continue to attract researchers and visitors from around the world. The monument is not only a powerful symbol of medieval religious art, but also an extraordinary example of large-scale stone carving techniques. Yet many questions remain unanswered. How were medieval craftsmen able to create such a complex multi-layered relief on a vertical rock face? What tools did they use to control the depth of each carved layer without fracturing the sandstone structure? And could these techniques have originated from a much older tradition of stone carving that existed long before the medieval period? It is precisely these unanswered questions that make the Externstein reliefs one of the most fascinating technical mysteries of ancient Europe, a place where art, engineering, and history seem to merge into a story that is still waiting to be fully understood. What do you think the craftsmen of the Externstein used to create such precise multi-layer carvings on a vertical rock face centuries ago? Share your thoughts and theories in the comments below. The Pictish Broch of Gurness stands on the windswept coastline of the Orkney Islands in northern Scotland, overlooking the cold waters of Ainhallow Sound. Today it appears as a quiet ring of ancient stone ruins, surrounded by grass and sea air, but beneath its weathered surface lies one of the most intriguing architectural mysteries of the ancient North Atlantic world. Archaeologists believe the settlement was established sometime around the late Iron Age, roughly between the 1st century before the Common Era and the 1st centuries after it. At the center of this settlement rises the structure that gives the site its identity, a massive circular stone tower known as a broch. Although now partially ruined, the broch once dominated the surrounding landscape, and even in its current state, it reveals a level of engineering sophistication that continues to puzzle researchers. Among all its mysteries, the most remarkable is the technique used to construct the tower itself, an enormous stone structure built entirely without mortar, relying solely on the careful placement and balance of stone blocks. If an ancient community more than 2,000 years ago was able to build a massive stone tower without mortar or machinery, what technique do you think they used to accomplish it? Share your thoughts in the comments below. At first glance, the broch appears simple, merely a circular tower made of stacked stone. But a closer examination reveals something far more complex. The stones used in the construction are not identical, nor are they perfectly shaped blocks like those found in later masonry traditions. Instead, they are irregular pieces of local sandstone gathered from the surrounding environment. Yet somehow these uneven stones fit together so precisely that the walls remain stable more than 2,000 years after they were first erected. This technique, often described as dry stone construction, requires extraordinary precision. Each stone must be selected, rotated, and positioned in such a way that its weight locks into the stones around it. The structure depends entirely on gravity, friction, and balance. If a single element is misplaced, the stability of the entire wall can be compromised. Despite this, the builders of the Broch of Gurness created walls several meters thick that once supported a tower likely more than 10 meters high. What makes this even more astonishing is the internal design of the broch walls. Rather than forming a single solid mass of stone, the builders created a double wall system. Two concentric walls were constructed, with a narrow hollow space between them. Within this space, stairways and small chambers were built spiraling upward inside the thickness of the wall itself. This design not only reduced weight, but also increased structural strength, distributing pressure across multiple layers of stone. The technique reveals an understanding of load distribution that seems remarkably advanced for a community living on remote northern islands during the Iron Age. There is no written record describing how these builders learned such methods, nor are there surviving construction plans explaining the process. The knowledge was likely passed down through generations of builders, preserved through practice rather than written instruction. The absence of mortar is particularly striking because it places enormous demands on the builder's skill. Mortar can compensate for imperfections in stone shape, filling gaps and stabilizing the structure. Without it, every stone must be carefully chosen to match the surfaces around it. At Gurness, the builders appear to have solved this challenge by layering stones in slightly inward-leaning courses, allowing the weight of the upper layers to compress the lower ones tightly together. This subtle inward curve may have helped the tower resist the powerful winds that sweep across the Orkney archipelago. Even today, centuries of storms have not fully destroyed the structure. The survival of the broch suggests that the builders had an intuitive understanding of structural mechanics, an understanding developed long before the formal science of engineering existed. Equally mysterious is the question of how the builders managed the logistics of construction. Some of the stones used in broch walls are large and heavy, requiring considerable effort to move and lift into place. In a time without cranes, metal lifting devices, or advanced tools, the builders must have relied on coordinated human labor, wooden levers, ramps, and perhaps simple lifting frames. Yet, even with such methods, constructing a tower of this scale would have required careful planning and organization. The placement of each stone had to be deliberate. Unlike structures built with mortar, where mistakes can be corrected during the building process, dry stone construction demands precision from the very beginning. Once a course of stones is placed and compressed under the weight above it, adjusting them becomes extremely difficult. The fact that the broch rose successfully suggests the presence of experienced master builders guiding the work. Surrounding the broch tower is a remarkably organized settlement that appears to have developed around it. Archaeological excavations have revealed a ring of stone houses arranged in a circular pattern around the central tower. Narrow pathways run between the buildings, and traces of drainage channels indicate that the settlement was carefully planned rather than randomly assembled. The broch itself likely served as the social and defensive heart of the community. Its height would have made it visible from far out at sea, perhaps functioning as a symbol of authority as well as a place of refuge. In times of danger, the inhabitants of the surrounding houses may have retreated inside the tower's thick walls, protected by the narrow entrance passage that could easily be defended. A defensive ditch surrounds the entire complex, adding another layer of intrigue to the site. This ditch would have forced approaching visitors to follow a controlled path toward the entrance, allowing the inhabitants to monitor movement into the settlement. Combined with the height of the broch and the density of the surrounding houses, the layout suggests a community that understood the strategic value of architecture. The builders were not merely stacking stones. They were designing an environment that balanced daily life with security. Despite decades of archaeological research, many aspects of the Broch of Gurness remain uncertain. Scholars continue to debate the original height of the tower. Some reconstructions suggest it may have reached several stories, with wooden floors supported by ledges built into the inner wall. If this is correct, the broch would have been one of the tallest structures in northern Europe at the time of its construction. Such a tower would have required careful control of weight and balance to prevent collapse. Yet the dry stone technique used here appears to have achieved exactly that. This raises one of the most fascinating questions surrounding the broch. How did the builders develop such advanced construction techniques in a remote island environment? The Orkney Islands were far from the great urban centers of the ancient Mediterranean world. There is little evidence that the inhabitants had access to the formal engineering knowledge that existed in civilizations such as Rome or Greece. And yet the Broch of Gurness demonstrates a level of architectural sophistication that rivals many later stone structures. Perhaps the answer lies in centuries of accumulated experience with stone. The people of the northern British Isles had long traditions of building with stone, from chambered tombs of the Neolithic era to later defensive structures. Over generations, builders may have refined their techniques through observation and experimentation, gradually learning how to manipulate weight, shape, and balance to create increasingly ambitious structures. Still, the leap from simple stone dwellings to a towering double-walled broch remains remarkable. Standing among the ruins today, it is difficult not to wonder what the tower once looked like when it was complete. The walls would have risen high above the surrounding houses, their stones tightly interlocked without a trace of mortar. Inside, narrow stairways would have wound upward through the hollow spaces within the walls, leading to upper levels that overlooked the sea. Smoke from hearth fires may have drifted upward through the interior, while watchful eyes scanned the horizon from above. The entire structure would have been both a home and a fortress, a symbol of community identity, built from nothing more than carefully balanced stone. In the end, the greatest mystery of the Pictish Broch of Gurness may be the simplicity of its materials, contrasted with the complexity of its design. There are no metal reinforcements, no cement, and no elaborate machinery hidden within its walls. The tower relies entirely on the intelligence and craftsmanship of the people who built it. Stone upon stone, each piece carefully chosen and placed, forming a structure that has endured for more than 2,000 years. And that leaves us with a question that archaeologists still struggle to answer. Without modern tools, mathematical calculations, or written engineering manuals, how did the ancient builders of Gurness learn to construct a massive stone tower that could stand against centuries of wind weather and time held together by nothing but the precise balance of stone? Raigad Fort rises dramatically above the rugged landscape of the Sahyadri Mountains in western India. Perched on a steep hill nearly 800 meters above sea level, the fortress once served as the capital of the Maratha Empire, under the rule of Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj in the 17th century. Today, the ruins appear quiet and weathered, but the mountain stronghold still carries an atmosphere of power and mystery. Massive stone walls cling to the edges of cliffs. Gates emerge from narrow passages carved into the rock. Reservoirs cut deep into the mountain still hold water centuries after their construction. Yet among all the remarkable features of Raigad, one element continues to fascinate historians, engineers, and archaeologists alike: the immense system of stone stairways carved directly into the living rock of the mountain itself. How do you think ancient builders managed to carve such a massive staircase directly into the hard rock of the mountain? Share your thoughts or theories in the comments below. Reaching Raigad was never meant to be easy. The fortress was designed to sit high above the surrounding valleys, where approaching armies could be seen long before they reached the walls. The natural terrain already provided formidable protection. On many sides, the mountain rises in sheer vertical cliffs that make climbing nearly impossible. But access to the summit still required a route, and instead of constructing a simple path, the builders created something far more complex. A long sequence of steps was carved into the mountain, winding upward along steep ridges and narrow ledges until reaching the main entrance of the fortress known as the Mahadarwaja. These steps form a monumental stone staircase that stretches for a great distance along the mountain's side. Even today, visitors must climb hundreds upon hundreds of steps to reach the top, following the same route that travelers, soldiers, traders, and royal messengers once used centuries ago. At first glance, these steps appear deceptively simple. They are rough stone stairs cut into the slope of the mountain. But a closer look reveals something far more impressive. Many of the steps are not built from stacked blocks, but are carved directly into the bedrock itself. The stone surface of the mountain was carefully cut, leveled, and shaped to create a staircase that follows the natural contours of the terrain. In some places, the steps are wide and regular. In others, they narrow and curve sharply along the cliffside. Yet despite these variations, the height and depth of the steps remain surprisingly consistent. This suggests that the builders were not randomly cutting the rock. They were working according to a planned design, measuring and shaping each section so that the staircase remained stable and usable along its entire length. The engineering challenge involved in this construction is difficult to overlook. Carving such a large number of steps into solid mountain rock would have required an enormous amount of labor. The stone of the Sahyadri Mountains is extremely hard basalt, a volcanic rock known for its durability. Cutting even small sections of basalt with simple tools can be time-consuming. Yet at Raigad, hundreds of steps were carved with enough precision to remain functional for centuries. The question that continues to puzzle researchers is how exactly this work was accomplished with the technology available at the time. Historical records suggest that iron chisels, hammers, and wedges were the primary tools used for stone cutting during this period. While such tools are certainly capable of shaping rock, the scale of the staircase suggests an extraordinary level of organization and skill among the workers who created it. Another striking feature of the staircase is the way it interacts with the natural terrain. Rather than forcing a straight route up the mountain, the path twists and turns repeatedly. Sections of the staircase bend around protruding rock formations or follow narrow ridges where the mountain briefly levels out. This winding design was almost certainly intentional. By forcing travelers to move through a series of turns, the route prevented anyone from charging directly toward the entrance of the fortress. Attackers would have been forced to climb slowly exposed to defenders positioned higher on the slopes. Every bend in the staircase created a potential defensive point where guards could observe or control movement. In this way, the staircase was not merely a pathway, it was an integrated component of the fortress's defensive architecture. Yet the defensive advantages alone do not fully explain the precision seen in the stonework. In many places along the staircase, the rock surface appears carefully smoothed where the steps were cut. Edges are defined clearly enough that the form of each step remains visible even after centuries of erosion. This raises an intriguing question. Were the builders simply carving steps wherever they could, or were they following a carefully planned geometric layout designed to maintain balance and stability across the entire slope? If a large portion of the staircase was carved directly from the mountain, it would have required accurate planning before the cutting even began. Removing too much rock in the wrong place could weaken the slope or create unstable surfaces. The workers would have needed to understand both the structure of the mountain and the mechanics of stair construction long before modern engineering theories were written. The location of the staircase also reveals a remarkable understanding of terrain. The builders selected a route that climbs the mountain at a manageable gradient rather than attempting a direct vertical ascent. This means the staircase gradually winds upward across the slope, increasing the distance but reducing the steepness of each section. The result is a path that, while still physically demanding, remains practical for daily use. Historical accounts suggest that Raigad was not only a military fortress, but also a thriving administrative center. Messengers, officials, merchants, and soldiers would have traveled up and down these steps regularly. Designing a staircase capable of supporting such constant movement would have required careful consideration of durability, drainage, and erosion. Another curious aspect is how the staircase integrates with other elements of the fortress. As climbers approach the upper sections, the path begins to narrow and pass between massive rock walls. Eventually, it leads toward the imposing gateway known as the Mahadarwaja. Here, the staircase funnels directly into a defensive corridor flanked by towering stone structures. This transition from open mountain path to enclosed gateway creates a dramatic shift in space. It also reinforces the defensive strategy of the fortress. Anyone climbing the mountain would reach this narrow point, exhausted from the ascent, while defenders positioned above the gateway could easily control the entrance. Despite the impressive engineering visible today, many details about the construction process remain uncertain. No detailed construction records have survived describing exactly how the staircase was carved or how long the work required. It is also unclear how the workers measured and aligned the steps along such a large and irregular slope. Did they use simple ropes and wooden markers to establish a path before cutting the rock? Did master builders oversee the project, guiding teams of laborers as they gradually shaped the mountain? Or was the staircase expanded in stages over many years as the fortress developed? Even the tools themselves raise interesting questions. Iron chisels and hammers could certainly shape basalt, but creating hundreds of uniform steps would have required repeated precision strikes against extremely hard stone. The durability of the staircase suggests that the workers were highly experienced in stone cutting. They may have used techniques such as heating and cooling rock to create fractures or driving metal wedges into drilled holes to break larger sections away before refining the surface. Yet without direct records, much of this remains speculation. The sheer scale of the staircase continues to inspire curiosity among modern observers. Standing at the base of the mountain and looking upward, it becomes clear that the builders were working on a monumental project. Each step represents a small alteration to the mountain itself, and together they form a continuous pathway that climbs hundreds of meters toward the fortress above. Over time, weather, vegetation, and human use have softened some of the edges, but the structure remains unmistakable. It is a reminder that the engineers and craftsmen of the past were capable of reshaping landscapes in ways that still impress visitors centuries later. Today, thousands of travelers make the same climb that people once made during the height of the Maratha Empire. As they ascend the stone staircase of Raigad, they follow a route carved directly into the mountain by human hands long ago. Every step carries traces of the labor and planning that went into transforming a rugged peak into one of the most formidable hill forts in India. Yet the deeper one examines the staircase, the more intriguing questions emerge. How precisely was the route designed before construction began? What surveying methods were used to maintain consistent step dimensions along such an uneven slope? And how did the builders coordinate the massive effort required to carve hundreds of steps into one of the hardest types of rock found in the region? These unanswered questions are part of what makes Raigad Fort so fascinating. The fortress is not merely a relic of political history. It is also a testament to human ingenuity and determination. The stone staircase carved into the mountain stands as both a practical pathway and a silent engineering achievement. Even after centuries of storms, monsoon rains, and constant use, it still leads visitors upward toward the ruins of the once powerful capital. And as each traveler climbs those ancient steps, they participate in a journey that began long ago, guided by the same carved path, whose creation continues to inspire curiosity, admiration, and mystery. Located on land that was once the center of power of the ancient Sasanian Empire near the ancient city of Ctesiphon in Iraq, a colossal structure has continued to stand for more than 1.5 millennia. Today, this monument is known as Taq Kasra, commonly referred to as the unfinished arch of Ctesiphon. Although most of the surrounding palace complex has disappeared over time, the enormous arch still rises above the Mesopotamian plain as a surviving trace of ancient engineering, one that modern researchers are still trying to fully understand. What makes this structure remarkable above all else is the sheer scale of its vault. It is widely considered the largest single-span brick arch ever constructed in the ancient world. The arch rises to a height of about 37 meters and spans nearly 26 meters across. Standing beneath it, a person can feel almost overwhelmed by the immense space towering overhead. What is truly astonishing is that this entire structure was built only from fired bricks and mortar, without steel reinforcement, without modern concrete, and without any permanent structural framework. In modern architecture, constructing an arch of this size requires extremely precise calculations of compressive forces, lateral pressure, and load distribution throughout the structure. These calculations are normally performed using advanced engineering software and computer simulations. Yet during the Sasanian period, none of those tools existed. No surviving technical blueprints have been discovered that explain exactly how the builders planned such an enormous structure. Nevertheless, the final result clearly demonstrates that they possessed an extraordinary understanding of how materials behave under the force of gravity. An arch functions according to a very special structural principle. Instead of resisting gravity through tension, like a straight beam, an arch transforms the entire load into compressive force. Each brick presses tightly against the next, and that compression is what holds the structure together. For this principle to work, however, the geometry of the arch must be extremely precise. Even a small error in the angle of the bricks could disrupt the compression forces and cause the entire structure to collapse. What astonishes engineers today is the stability of the Ctesiphon arch. Despite surviving more than 14 centuries of earthquakes, warfare, erosion, and harsh environmental conditions, the central vault still stands. This suggests that its geometry distributes structural forces with remarkable efficiency. Modern studies suggest that the curve of the arch closely resembles a parabolic shape, a form that naturally distributes compressive forces very efficiently. But this observation raises an intriguing question. Did Sasanian architects truly understand the mathematics behind these optimal curves? Or did they achieve this design through generations of accumulated construction experience? Another mystery concerns the method used to construct the vault. In many ancient arches, builders relied on massive wooden scaffolding frameworks to support bricks until the arch was complete. However, given the immense scale of the Ctesiphon arch, constructing such scaffolding would have been a monumental task. Furthermore, wood was not an abundant resource in ancient Mesopotamia. One theory suggests that the builders employed a special technique, laying bricks in slightly inclined, self-locking layers. Each layer would be placed at a subtle angle so that gravity helped stabilize the structure as it gradually rose upward. If this theory is correct, it would mean that Sasanian engineers developed an advanced construction technique capable of creating enormous vaults without the need for large wooden support systems. Yet another question remains unanswered. How did they maintain the precise curvature of the arch during construction? In an era without lasers, digital measuring devices, or modern surveying tools, maintaining perfect geometry on a structure tens of meters tall would have been extraordinarily difficult. Not only is the shape of the arch impressive, but the way the bricks are arranged has also drawn the attention of researchers. The bricks are laid in orderly layers that form smooth flowing curves when viewed from inside the vault. These layers appear to channel structural forces downward into the two enormous walls on either side of the arch, which carry the entire weight of the structure. Another remarkable feature is the change in wall thickness throughout the structure. Near the base of the arch, the walls are extremely thick to withstand the immense compressive forces. But as the structure rises higher, the thickness gradually decreases. This design significantly reduces the overall weight of the structure, helping the vault remain stable. Today, this strategy is recognized as an intelligent engineering approach in architectural design. The fact that it was applied more than a millennium ago demonstrates the impressive technical knowledge possessed by ancient engineers. Some scholars believe that the Ctesiphon arch was once part of a vast palace complex. The immense space beneath the vault may have served as a grand ceremonial hall where Sasanian kings received foreign envoys and held royal audiences. Standing beneath the arch, sound would likely echo through the massive chamber, amplifying voices and creating an atmosphere of power and authority during official ceremonies. However, another element deepens the mystery of this monument. Some researchers believe that the structure may never have been fully completed. Certain architectural elements around the arch appear unfinished, suggesting that the original construction plan may have been even larger. If that is true, the next question becomes obvious. Why would such a massive project have been abandoned? Some historians suggest that warfare and political upheaval in the region may have halted construction. Others speculate that the builders may have reached the technical limits of their time and decided not to continue expanding the complex. Regardless of the true reason, the remaining arch of Ctesiphon stands as a powerful testament to the remarkable engineering abilities of the ancient world. It demonstrates that even without modern machines, humans were capable of constructing enormous structures through a deep understanding of materials geometry and structural forces. Today, as engineers and archaeologists continue to study the monument, every detail seems to raise new questions. How did ancient architects calculate the precise angles of each brick layer? What measuring tools did they use? And perhaps most importantly, were the engineering principles behind this structure once recorded somewhere only to be lost over the course of history? The unfinished Arch of Ctesiphon is therefore not merely an ancient ruin. It is a colossal engineering puzzle built from brick, a monument that still causes modern engineers to pause and reflect. And each time people look up at that towering brick vault, they cannot help but wonder, have we truly understood everything the ancient builders once knew? What do you think? How do you believe ancient engineers managed to design and build such an enormous brick arch without modern technology? Share your thoughts and theories in the comments below. In the ancient world, where civilizations left behind enormous stone monuments to demonstrate their power, religious beliefs, and technical skill, one of the most astonishing structures can be found on the island of Sicily, in modern-day Italy, the Telamons of the Temple of Olympian Zeus at the Valley of the Temples. These were not merely giant stone statues, but part of the complex architectural system of the great Temple of Zeus, where ancient Greek craftsmen transformed colossal human figures into structural supports for a massive building. These figures, commonly called Telamons or Atlantes, stood approximately 7 to 8 meters tall, with enormous bodies positioned upright and their hands placed above their heads as if they were bearing the immense weight of the temple above them. When archaeologists first began studying these ruins, they quickly realized that the Telamons were not simply decorative elements. They were designed to function as part of the architectural structure itself, positioned against the walls and directly connected to the large stone blocks above them, creating a design in which sculpture and structural engineering became one unified system. The existence of these Telamons immediately raised questions about the technical capabilities of ancient Greek architects and stoneworkers. These colossal figures not only had to be carved with precise proportions to form a realistic human shape, but they also had to be engineered to support the weight of the architectural blocks above them. This required a significant understanding of force weight and load distribution within a structure. If even a small detail in the design had been miscalculated, the entire system could have become unstable. Yet the Telamons appear to have been created with remarkable balance and structural awareness. The shoulders back and arms of the statues seem carefully designed to align with the architectural stones above them, making them appear like living pillars, carrying the immense weight of the temple. However, as researchers continued to analyze the structure, an even greater technical mystery emerged. How were the enormous stone blocks used to create the Telamons transported to the construction site and placed into position? This is one of the most important questions surrounding the monument. The Telamons were not small statues that could be easily moved. They were carved from massive blocks of stone weighing many tons. These stones first had to be quarried from stone sources located a considerable distance from the temple site. In the ancient world, quarrying stone itself was already a task that required great labor and technical skill. Stoneworkers had to detach large blocks from rock faces using metal tools, wooden wedges, and traditional stone-cutting techniques. After removing a block, they also had to ensure it was large enough and structurally intact to be carved into a colossal human figure. Yet quarrying was only the beginning of the challenge. The far greater difficulty lay in transporting these enormous blocks from the quarry to the temple construction site. In the modern world, we rely on cranes, heavy trucks, and complex mechanical systems. But in the 5th century BCE, the Greek builders had access only to human labor-animal power and relatively simple mechanical devices. Some researchers believe the Greeks may have used large wooden sledges to drag the stones across the ground. The stone blocks could have been placed on these sledges and pulled by dozens or even hundreds of workers. In some situations, water or oil might have been poured onto the ground to reduce friction, allowing the stones to slide more easily. Another hypothesis suggests that the stones could have been transported using wooden rollers. By placing the massive blocks on top of round wooden logs and continuously moving the rollers from the back to the front, workers could slowly move the stones forward toward the construction site. However, even if such techniques were used, transporting stones weighing many tons across uneven terrain would still have been extremely difficult. A single mistake could cause a block to tip over, crack, or break completely. Even after the stones reached the construction site, another major question remained. How were they lifted into their high positions on the walls of the temple? The Telamons were not placed at ground level. They stood at a considerable height, forming part of the massive walls of the Temple of Zeus. This means the builders had to find a way to raise these enormous stones upward before carving them fully or after they had already been shaped into statues. Some researchers believe the Greeks may have used enormous earthen ramps. By constructing long ramps made of packed earth, and stone workers could gradually drag the blocks upward until they reached the desired height. Once the block had been placed in position, the ramp could then be dismantled. Another possibility involves the use of pulley systems and early cranes. The Greeks are known to have invented several types of simple cranes during this period. These devices used ropes, pulleys, and lever mechanisms to lift heavy loads. However, even with such technology, lifting a massive stone block weighing many tons to a great height would still have been an extraordinary challenge. Archaeological evidence for such lifting devices at Agrigento remains limited, leaving the exact method uncertain. This lack of clear evidence is precisely what has made the Telamons such a fascinating subject for archaeologists and engineers today. When looking at the surviving ruins, we can see fragments of these colossal statues scattered across the ground. Yet when we imagine them standing upright, attached to the massive walls of the Temple of Zeus, the scale of the structure becomes almost unbelievable. Transporting, lifting, and installing these enormous stone blocks would have required not only immense labor, but also a high level of organization and technical knowledge. This leads to another intriguing question. Did the ancient Greeks possess construction and mechanical techniques more advanced than we currently understand? It is possible that certain methods for transporting and lifting stone existed, but were never recorded in historical texts. Alternatively, those techniques may simply have been lost over time. Whatever the explanation, the Telamons of Agrigento remain a powerful reminder of the remarkable engineering abilities of the ancient world. They are not only colossal works of sculpture, but also enormous technical puzzles that continue to raise questions science has not yet fully answered. And perhaps that is what makes them truly extraordinary. These giant stone figures tell not only the story of an ancient temple, but also of engineering secrets that may still be waiting to be rediscovered. So what do you think? How do you believe the ancient builders managed to transport and raise such enormous stone figures for the temple of Olympian Zeus? Do you think they used simple mechanical systems like ramps, sledges, and cranes? Or could there have been construction techniques that history has completely forgotten? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear what you think. Sibanchi lies deep within the dense tropical forests of the Yucatan Peninsula and was once an important center of power in the ancient Maya civilization. Within this vast archaeological complex, filled with pyramids, ceremonial plazas, and ancient stone structures worn down by time, there stands a remarkable building often referred to as Dzibilchaltún Owl Temple. Although it is not the largest structure at Dzibilchaltún, this temple has attracted special attention from archaeologists and modern engineers because of its refined architectural details and the technical mysteries that even today remain only partially understood. One of the first striking features when observing the structure is the owl symbol carved into the architecture of the temple. In the symbolic world of the Maya, owls were often associated with the night, the spirit world, and messages from the realm beyond. For this reason, many researchers believe that the temple may once have played a role in special religious ceremonies, possibly related to rituals involving deities or ancestors. However, what draws the attention of archaeologists is not only the symbolic meaning of this carving, but also the remarkable craftsmanship of the stone carving itself. The carved lines remain astonishingly sharp even after thousands of years of exposure to weather and the tropical environment. This suggests that Maya artisans were not merely builders, but true masters of stoneworking techniques. However, deeper study has revealed that the true mystery of Dzibilchaltún Owl Temple lies in the way its entire stone structure was built with nearly perfect precision. The walls of the temple are composed of numerous stone blocks that were cut and fitted together with extraordinary tightness. In many cases, the stones are placed so closely together that there are almost no visible gaps between them. Some researchers have even remarked that the joints between the stones are so fine that it is difficult to insert even a thin blade between them. This level of precision has astonished many modern scientists. During the period when Dzibilchaltún flourished, the Maya did not possess advanced metal tools such as iron or steel. Most of their tools were made from hard stones such as obsidian or chert. While these materials can produce sharp edges, using them to cut and shape perfectly flat stone surfaces would have been extremely difficult and time-consuming. When examining the surfaces of the stones in the Owl Temple, archaeologists have noticed clear signs that they were systematically shaped and polished. This suggests that the Maya may have used a specialized stoneworking technique, possibly involving the grinding of stone with sand and water over long periods to achieve flat surfaces. However, even this explanation does not fully account for how the stones were shaped with such accuracy that they fit together across the entire structure of the temple. Some of the blocks are not perfectly rectangular, but instead appear to have been carefully modified so that they match the exact position where they were placed within the wall. This indicates that the construction process may have been planned and executed with astonishing precision, with each stone individually shaped to ensure that it would fit perfectly with the surrounding blocks once set into place. The mystery becomes even more complex when considering how these heavy stone blocks were transported to the construction site. The Maya did not use the wheel for large construction projects, and they also lacked strong draft animals such as oxen or horses. This means that stone blocks weighing hundreds of kilograms, perhaps even more, were likely transported entirely through human labor. Some theories suggest that the Maya may have used earthen ramps, ropes, and wooden lever systems to pull and lift the stones into position. Yet even if such methods were used, precisely adjusting the position of each stone once it had been placed in the wall would still have been a major challenge. To achieve the nearly perfect fit seen in the temple, builders likely had to repeatedly grind, reshape, and test the stones until the desired alignment was achieved. Another factor that adds to the mystery of the structure is the multi-layered nature of its foundations. Archaeological studies suggest that the Owl Temple may have been built on top of older structures. This practice aligns with Maya architectural traditions, in which religious buildings were often constructed directly over earlier structures as part of ritual cycles and the continuation of political authority. However, building multiple architectural layers in this way raises an important question. If each generation expanded or rebuilt the temple, how were they able to maintain such high precision in the fitting of the stone blocks across different construction phases? Integrating new architectural sections into an older structure while preserving stability and balance would require a deep understanding of gravity, weight, distribution, and structural engineering. Some researchers believe that Maya builders may have possessed a professional tradition passed down through generations in which construction knowledge was preserved and transmitted from master craftsmen to their apprentices. However, because the Maya left behind very few detailed technical records describing their building methods, most of these techniques have disappeared along with the decline of their civilization. Today, when standing before the ruins of Dzibilchaltún Owl Temple, archaeologists, engineers, and visitors alike share a sense of amazement. The stone walls have remained standing after centuries of rain and wind, and the blocks still maintain their remarkably tight connections. The structure stands as a powerful testament to the engineering ability of the ancient Maya, a civilization capable of building durable and precise structures even without advanced metal technologies. This leads many researchers to ask even larger questions. Could Maya construction techniques have been far more advanced than we usually assume? Is it possible that they developed stoneworking methods that modern science still does not fully understand? And might there still be older structures or undiscovered archaeological secrets hidden beneath the layers of the Owl Temple? To this day, Dzibilchaltún Owl Temple remains one of the smaller yet deeply mysterious monuments of the Maya world. Although it is not as massive as some of the famous pyramids of Mesoamerica, the temple continues to provoke reflection about the technical capabilities and knowledge of ancient civilizations. Because each tightly fitted stone block does not merely form an ancient building, it also seems to preserve a fragment of lost architectural knowledge from humanity's distant past, knowledge that we may still be trying to rediscover even today. What do you think? Do you believe the Maya possessed construction techniques that modern researchers still do not fully understand, or could there be another explanation behind the astonishing precision of the Owl Temple's stonework? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your ideas might offer a perspective others haven't considered. Hidden within the arid deserts of Central Asia, the ruins of Topra Kala's high palace still stand as a mysterious reminder of the remarkable architectural abilities of an ancient civilization that disappeared long ago. The structure lies within the ancient fortress of Topra Kala, part of the historic region of Khwarezm, located today in modern-day Uzbekistan. Archaeologists believe the complex was constructed around the 2nd or 3rd century CE during a period when the Khwarezmian kingdom was reaching the height of its power. Among all the structures inside the fortress, the High Palace is considered the center of authority, likely serving both as the residence of the ruling elite and as a location for important royal ceremonies. Yet what makes this structure so astonishing is not only its political or religious role, but also the construction techniques that seem to surpass what we usually imagine about ancient architecture in harsh desert environments. The most striking feature of Topra Kala's High Palace is the enormous scale of a structure built almost entirely from sun-dried mud bricks. In many ancient civilizations, mud brick was considered a relatively simple building material, often vulnerable to erosion and destruction over time, especially in harsh desert environments where temperatures fluctuate dramatically between day and night. Yet the High Palace presents a completely different reality. The palace once rose to a height of around 25 meters, roughly comparable to a multi-story building in the modern world. Its walls, several meters thick, were constructed from thousands upon thousands of mud bricks, forming a massive architectural block that once dominated the surrounding desert landscape. Even today, when viewing the ruins, it is difficult to believe that a structure built from what appears to be such a fragile material could survive for nearly 2,000 years. This raises an important question that researchers continue to debate: how could ancient builders construct such a tall and heavy structure using only mud bricks while ensuring its long-term stability? For any multi-story building to remain standing, factors such as weight distribution, wall thickness, and load-bearing support must be carefully calculated. The walls of the High Palace were not simply stacked bricks. Instead, they appear to have been engineered with thicker foundations at the lower levels and gradually adjusted structural proportions as the building rose higher, creating a remarkably stable architectural form. This suggests that the builders possessed a sophisticated understanding of structural weight distribution, even without modern measuring instruments or engineering tools. The interior layout of the palace also played an important role in maintaining the stability of the entire structure. The High Palace was not a hollow block of space. Instead, it contained a complex network of large rooms, corridors and staircases leading to upper levels. These internal spaces were not only functional for daily activities or ceremonial purposes, they may also have acted as natural structural reinforcements within the building. Interior partition walls and corridors helped divide and redirect structural pressure, reducing the risk of collapse under the immense weight of the upper floors. What is particularly remarkable is that all of this was accomplished without reinforced concrete, without steel support structures, and without modern construction technology. Another factor that makes the High Palace extraordinary is its ability to endure the harsh desert environment. Temperatures in the region can fluctuate dramatically between day and night, while desert winds and blowing sand constantly erode exposed structures. Under such conditions, mud bricks would normally crumble or gradually erode away. Yet the surviving walls of the High Palace demonstrate that large sections of the structure have endured for nearly 2 millennia. This has led some researchers to believe that the builders may have used a specialized technique when mixing soil straw and water to create bricks that were stronger and more durable than typical mud bricks. It is possible that the ancient builders had a deep understanding of the local materials and optimized them for the extreme desert climate. Beyond its impressive engineering, the High Palace also contains many mysterious elements related to the functions of its interior spaces. Several large rooms were decorated with enormous clay statues believed to represent the kings of Khwarezm. These statues once stood in ceremonial halls, arranged in rows as if forming a royal assembly. Such a setting suggests that these spaces may have held deep political or religious significance. However, when archaeologists uncovered these statues in the 20th century, many of them had been deliberately broken. The damage appeared intentional, suggesting that the palace may have experienced a dramatic historical event, possibly a rebellion, an invasion, or a shift in royal power. The overall design of the High Palace also surprised many researchers. Instead of a straightforward palace layout, with symmetrical rooms, the structure resembles something closer to a labyrinth. A complex network of winding corridors, staircases leading to multiple levels and rooms of different sizes creates a surprisingly intricate layout. Some scholars believe this design may have served a defensive purpose, making it difficult for intruders to navigate toward the central royal areas. Others propose that the layout might have held symbolic meaning, where moving through different corridors and chambers represented a ritual or ceremonial journey. Given the intense heat of the Central Asian desert, the High Palace also appears to have incorporated architectural features that helped regulate temperature. Some rooms contain narrow wall openings and long corridors that may have directed airflow through the structure. These features have led researchers to believe that the palace may have used a form of natural ventilation, allowing air to circulate and cool interior spaces. If this interpretation is correct, it would indicate that the builders understood how to use wind direction and architectural design to create more comfortable living conditions within an extremely hot desert environment. Today, although much of Topra Kala's high palace has been eroded by time and nature, what remains is still enough to astonish archaeologists. A multi-story palace built almost entirely from mud bricks, surviving nearly 2,000 years in a desert landscape, containing ceremonial halls, giant statues, complex corridors, and ancient ventilation systems. All of these elements raise more questions than answers. The structure suggests that ancient civilizations in Central Asia may have possessed far more advanced knowledge of architecture and engineering than historians once believed. For this reason, Topra Kala's high palace is not merely the ruin of an ancient palace. It stands as powerful evidence that the creativity and technical understanding of past civilizations may have been far greater than what history has fully recorded. Its massive mud brick walls, still standing after nearly 2 millennia, seem to silently pose a question to modern researchers. Have we truly uncovered all the engineering secrets of the ancient builders who created this remarkable palace? How do you think ancient builders were able to construct a massive multi-story palace from mud bricks that has survived for nearly 2,000 years? Share your thoughts in the comments below. The Stonehenge of the Amazon Calquine is one of the most mysterious archaeological structures ever discovered in the Amazon rainforest. Located in the Brazilian state of Amapa, this site consists of a massive stone circle formed by numerous upright granite blocks. Because its structure bears similarities to Stonehenge, researchers often refer to it as the Stonehenge of the Amazon. However, what makes this site truly remarkable is not only its circular layout, but also the major questions it raises about the technological capabilities, engineering knowledge, and organizational capacity of the people who built it in an environment that seems extremely unsuitable for large megalithic construction. One of the most astonishing features of Calquine is the presence of enormous granite stones that have been erected vertically to form the circle. These stones typically stand between 3 and 4 meters tall, and many of them weigh several tons. Unlike stones that naturally lie scattered across the ground, the blocks here were clearly placed, intentionally planted deep into the soil like gigantic pillars. Close observation reveals that they were not positioned randomly. Instead, they follow a clear structural pattern, forming an almost complete circular layout that strongly suggests the builders worked according to a deliberate plan. What makes this even more remarkable is the environmental context of the Amazon. This region is not an easy place for large-scale stone construction. Unlike areas with exposed rock quarries and dry terrain, much of the Amazon consists of dense rainforest, with soft, humid soil that is frequently affected by heavy rainfall. Transporting granite stones weighing several tons through such terrain would be an enormous challenge even with modern technology. This raises a critical question for archaeologists. How could ancient people living in this region extract, transport, and erect such massive stones? Granite is an extremely hard type of rock. Splitting large blocks from natural formations usually requires strong tools or specialized techniques. However, among ancient Amazonian cultures, there is currently no clear evidence that they possessed advanced metal tools comparable to those used by major civilizations in the Andes or the ancient Near East. If they relied mainly on stone or wooden tools, extracting large granite blocks would have been extraordinarily difficult. This leads to another important question: were these stones taken from nearby natural outcrops, or were they transported from a more distant source? After extraction, the stones would still have to be transported to the construction site. In many ancient civilizations, large stones were moved using sledges, wooden rollers, or rope-pulling systems. Yet within the dense Amazon rainforest, where vegetation is thick and the ground is uneven, applying such methods would have been extremely difficult. Transport routes would have needed to be cleared, and the ground would have had to be stable enough to support the immense weight of the stones. This strongly suggests that the construction of the site may have involved a large and well-organized community capable of coordinating significant labor efforts. But the true challenge was not only moving the stones. Perhaps the most difficult task was raising the granite blocks, each weighing several tons, into a perfectly upright position. To accomplish this, the builders would have needed to dig deep holes, large enough to hold the base of each stone. The stones then had to be lifted upright and stabilized, while the surrounding soil was packed tightly around the base to secure them in place. This process would have required precise coordination among many people and may have involved the use of lever systems, ramps, or temporary earthen structures. What is truly remarkable is that many of the stones at Calcoene are still standing after thousands of years, despite heavy rainfall, soil erosion, and the relentless growth of the surrounding rainforest. This indicates that their foundations were engineered deep enough and strong enough to resist ground movement over long periods of time. The question that remains is striking: how did the ancient builders determine the correct depth and stability of the foundations to ensure that these massive stones would remain upright for millennia? When examining the overall structure of the stone circle, it becomes clear that the stones were not only erected, but also arranged according to a deliberate geometric pattern. The spacing between many of the stones shows a relatively consistent rhythm, forming a clear circular shape. Achieving such a design would require the builders to determine the center of the circle and measure the distance from that center to each stone's placement point. In a dense rainforest environment, where visibility is limited by thick vegetation, carrying out such geometric measurements would not have been simple. Some researchers believe the stone circle may have been connected to astronomical observations. At one point, within the circle, sunlight appears to pass directly through a gap between the stones during the winter solstice. If this alignment was intentional, it would suggest that the builders of Calcoene were not only capable of organizing large-scale construction, but also possessed significant knowledge about the movement of the sun across the sky. Determining the precise day of the winter solstice would require many years of observing solar cycles and recording where the sun rises or sets along the horizon. Perhaps the most puzzling aspect of the Calcoene site is simply that such a megalithic structure exists in the Amazon at all. For many decades, this region was often portrayed as a place inhabited primarily by small, scattered communities that relied on hunting-gathering and small-scale agriculture. Massive stone monuments are typically associated with societies that have complex social organization and large labor forces. The existence of Calcoene suggests that ancient Amazonian societies may have been far more sophisticated than previously believed. Archaeological excavations in the area have uncovered fragments of ancient pottery and traces of wooden post holes, indicating that the site was once part of a larger settlement or ceremonial center. Even so, many questions remain unanswered. We still do not know exactly which culture built the stone circle, how long they lived in this region, or what the structure's true purpose was. The site may have functioned as an ancient astronomical observatory. It may have been a ceremonial gathering place, where communities assembled during important times of the year. or it may have served several purposes at once. Regardless of its original function, the towering granite stones standing silently in the Amazon rainforest continue to raise profound questions for modern science. How could an ancient society living in a dense rainforest environment organize the extraction, transportation, and erection of stones weighing several tons? What tools and engineering techniques did they use to ensure that these stones would remain upright for thousands of years? And if they were capable of building such a monument, how many other megalithic structures might still lie hidden beneath the vast canopy of the Amazon, waiting to be discovered? How do you think ancient people in the Amazon managed to move and erect these massive granite stones without advanced tools or machinery? Share your thoughts and theories in the comments below. In the ancient world, as large cities began to grow and develop, the supply of clean water became one of the most important engineering challenges. The Romans were famous for their ability to construct enormous water supply systems, stretching for dozens of kilometers, carrying water from distant mountain springs and rivers to densely populated urban centers. However, among the hundreds of Roman aqueducts that still exist today, the Aspendos aqueduct in the ancient region of Pamphylia in southern Turkey is considered one of the most unique and technically mysterious systems ever built. This structure is impressive not only because of its scale, but also because of its bold engineering solutions, especially the high-pressure stone pipe system assembled with nearly perfect precision, a technology that continues to astonish researchers even today. How do you think Roman engineers were able to design, turn, and build such an incredibly precise, high-pressure stone pipe system nearly 2,000 years ago without modern machines, advanced measuring tools, or computer calculations? Do you believe it was purely the result of Roman engineering skill? Or could there be techniques we still do not fully understand today? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Aspendos was once an important Roman city famous for its massive theater that still stands almost perfectly preserved today. Yet few people realize that the city's water supply system was also an extraordinary engineering achievement. The main water source for the city lay in the highlands several kilometers away, and in order to bring water to Aspendos, Roman engineers had to construct a complex aqueduct system that crossed wide valleys and rugged terrain. In most other Roman aqueducts, water flowed through open channels with a very gentle slope, moving continuously under the force of gravity. But at Aspendos, the terrain forced engineers to confront a completely different problem, a deep valley that a normal water channel could not cross. To solve this problem, they employed a rare technology in ancient aqueduct systems known as an inverted siphon. In this system, water from the channel flows down into a tall tower, enters sealed pipes capable of withstanding high pressure, and then rises again into another tower on the opposite side of the valley before continuing through a normal channel. This principle relies on the pressure created by the column of water, but applying such a system in antiquity required a remarkable understanding of hydraulics. In the case of Aspendos, the siphon system was not only large, but also built with astonishing precision. The two pressure towers of the siphon system at Aspendos rise to approximately 25 to 30 meters in height and are constructed from large stone blocks fitted tightly together. From these towers, water enters the pressure pipe system and travels across the valley before being forced upward again on the opposite side. Yet it is precisely these pressure pipes that make the structure particularly remarkable and mysterious. Unlike many other Roman siphon systems that use lead or ceramic pipes, archaeological research at Aspendos has revealed that part of the pipeline was created from massive stone blocks hollowed out internally, then joined together to form a sealed pipeline. This is perhaps one of the most astonishing technical details of the entire structure. Each stone block was hollowed into a cylindrical pipe segment, and these segments were then placed end to end to create a continuous pipeline capable of carrying high-pressure water. For the system to function properly, the stone blocks had to be shaped and fitted with extremely high precision, because even a tiny gap could cause water leakage or weaken the entire pressure system. As water flowed through the siphon, pressure could increase significantly due to the height of the water column. This meant that the stone pipes not only had to be watertight, but also had to withstand enormous internal pressure for long periods of time. Modern researchers who have studied these stone pipes have discovered that the joint surfaces between the blocks were worked with extraordinary accuracy. In many cases, the contact surfaces are so flat that the gaps between them are nearly invisible to the naked eye. This raises an important question. What tools and techniques did Roman engineers use to create such precise stone pipes? Drilling a long, perfectly round channel inside a large stone block is not an easy task, even with modern technology. Yet in the 2nd century CE, Roman engineers appear to have accomplished this with remarkable accuracy. Some researchers suggest that ancient craftsmen may have used rotating stone drills combined with abrasive sand to create the cylindrical holes inside the stone blocks. However, even with this method, keeping the drill perfectly straight and even through a large block of stone would have been extremely challenging. In addition, once the blocks were hollowed out, their ends had to be carefully smoothed and leveled so they could connect tightly with the next section. Archaeological traces indicate that these surfaces were finished with great care, possibly through long periods of grinding and polishing. Another question that continues to puzzle many scientists is how the Romans ensured that these stone pipelines were completely watertight. In many other Roman siphon systems, joints were sealed using lead or hydraulic mortar. But with the stone pipes at Aspendos, the connections had to be precise enough to minimize leakage on their own. This suggests that Roman engineers may have had a sophisticated understanding of water pressure and knew exactly how tight these joints needed to be for the system to function reliably. Furthermore, the entire aqueduct system of Aspendos had to maintain an extremely precise gradient along the long distance between the water source and the city. If the slope were too small, the water would not flow efficiently. If it were too steep, the flow could cause erosion or create excessive pressure in the siphon system. This means that ancient engineers had to survey the terrain over a very large area and calculate the elevation of every section of the structure with remarkable accuracy. Today, many parts of the Aspendos aqueduct still survive after nearly 2,000 years. The massive siphon towers remain standing, and sections of the water system can still be clearly identified within the surrounding landscape. This demonstrates that the structure was not only well designed, but also built with exceptionally high quality. Despite decades of study, the Aspendos aqueduct still leaves many questions without clear answers. How were Roman engineers able to calculate the water pressure within such a large siphon system with such accuracy? How did they test the durability of the stone pipes before putting the system into operation? And perhaps most importantly, how were ancient craftsmen able to create hollow stone pipelines and join them with such precision that they could withstand high water pressure for centuries? These questions transform the Aspendos aqueduct from merely an ancient infrastructure project into a true engineering mystery that archaeologists and modern engineers continue to investigate. The structure suggests that the technical knowledge of the ancient world may have been far more advanced than we fully understand today. And when one looks at those precisely fitted stone blocks forming enormous pressure pipelines, it is difficult not to wonder, did the Romans possess engineering techniques and calculation methods that history never fully recorded, or are we only beginning to understand a small part of their true technological capabilities? The gear aqueduct siphons are among the most impressive and mysterious hydraulic engineering systems of the ancient Roman world. This structure is part of the gear aqueduct, which was constructed around the 1st century CE to supply water to the city of Lugdunum, known today as Lyon, in modern France. The entire aqueduct system stretches for approximately 86 kilometers, beginning from mountain springs and carrying water across extremely complex terrain, including forests, hills, and deep valleys before reaching the city. Along this route, Roman engineers combined multiple technical solutions such as open water channels, tunnels carved through hills, stone aqueduct bridges, and most remarkably massive inverted siphon systems, a feature that continues to astonish modern engineers and remains one of the most intriguing technical mysteries of ancient infrastructure. The most remarkable and intriguing aspect of the gear aqueduct is the way Roman engineers solved the challenge of difficult terrain when the water channel encountered deep valleys. Roman aqueducts normally operated using a simple principle: water flowed by gravity along a very gentle but continuous slope from the source to the destination. However, when the aqueduct reached a deep valley building, a bridge tall enough to maintain that slope would often be nearly impossible, especially when the valley was extremely wide. To solve this problem, Roman engineers used an ingenious method known as an inverted siphon. Instead of keeping the water at the same elevation, they allowed the water to descend to the bottom of the valley through sealed pressure pipes. As the water flowed downward, gravity increased the pressure within the pipes. At the lowest point, the pipes crossed the valley floor and then climbed up the opposite side. The pressure created by the descending column of water forced the water upward again until it nearly reached the original level of the aqueduct channel. Once the water returned to that height, it continued flowing through the aqueduct as before. Although the principle may appear simple, constructing such a massive siphon system in antiquity was an extraordinary engineering achievement. As water descends into the valley, the pressure inside the pipe rises dramatically due to the weight of the water column above it. In some sections of the gear system, modern researchers estimate that the water pressure inside the pipes could reach several bars, comparable to the pressures found in modern urban water supply networks. If the materials or joints were weak, the entire system could burst in seconds. Yet Roman engineers successfully built pipelines capable of withstanding such pressure using materials and technology available nearly 2,000 years ago. Most of the siphon pipes of the gear aqueduct were made of lead, a material widely used by Roman hydraulic engineers. These pipes were manufactured in sections and joined together with remarkable precision. Even more impressive is that in many locations, the system did not rely on a single pipe. Instead, multiple pipes ran in parallel, sometimes dozens at once. This arrangement distributed the hydraulic pressure across several pipelines and allowed large volumes of water to move through the system without overloading any single conduit. Such a design demonstrates a surprisingly advanced understanding of how pressure behaves in hydraulic systems. These pipelines were often supported by sturdy stone structures built along the valley floor. One of the most famous locations of this siphon system lies near the town of Chapanost, where the remains of large stone bridges can still be seen today. These stone structures once carried and stabilized the water pipes, ensuring that they remained perfectly aligned along the siphon route. Some of these stone bridges rise more than 15 meters above the ground and extend for hundreds of meters across the valley. Today, only the stone frameworks remain, but they still reveal the enormous scale of the engineering system that once operated here. The combination of massive stone construction and pressurized pipelines formed a sophisticated hydraulic machine embedded in the landscape. What fascinates modern scientists most is how Roman engineers were able to calculate these siphon systems. For a siphon to function properly, the heights of its starting and ending points must be determined with great precision. If the pipe rises too high on the far side of the valley, the water will not be able to climb back up. If it is too low, the flow may become unstable or generate excessive pressure within the system. Modern engineers rely on complex hydraulic equations to calculate these factors, including pressure flow velocity and energy loss inside pipelines. However, in the Roman world, such mathematical formulas had not yet been fully developed in theoretical form. This raises a compelling question. How were Roman engineers able to design such complex hydraulic systems without modern calculations? Some scholars believe their knowledge came from generations of practical experimentation and observation. Others suggest that Roman engineers may have possessed highly sophisticated, practical measuring techniques that were never fully recorded in surviving texts. Beyond pressure management, surveying the terrain for the aqueduct itself was a monumental challenge. For water to flow properly across more than 80 kilometers, the channel slope had to remain almost perfectly consistent. Even a slight error could cause the water to move too quickly and erode the channel, or too slowly and stop flowing entirely. Roman surveyors used instruments such as the chorobates and the groma to measure elevation and alignment. Despite the simplicity of these tools, the precision they achieved across such long distances still surprises many modern engineers. Today, the ruins of the Gir aqueduct siphons stand as silent evidence of an advanced engineering tradition that flourished nearly 2,000 years ago. The surviving stone bridges stretch across valleys like the skeletal frame of a giant machine that once operated with remarkable efficiency. The inverted siphon system of the Gir aqueduct was not merely a practical solution for transporting water across valleys. It also demonstrates that Roman engineers possessed a deep understanding of water pressure and hydraulic behavior long before modern fluid mechanics was formally developed. Yet the true origins of that knowledge remain uncertain. Did Roman engineers develop their techniques through centuries of experimentation and accumulated experience, or did they possess technical knowledge that has since been lost to history? These lingering questions are what make the Gir aqueduct siphons one of the most fascinating mysteries of ancient engineering, a vast hydraulic system built nearly 2,000 years ago that still amazes the modern world with its sophistication. So how did Roman engineers manage to design such a massive inverted siphon system nearly 2,000 years ago without modern hydraulic formulas or technology? Do you think their knowledge came purely from long generations of experimentation? Or could there have been advanced engineering techniques that have been lost to history? Share your thoughts in the comments below. The Modhera Sun Pool, known as Surya Kund, stands as one of the most visually striking and technically intriguing structures within the ancient Sun Temple complex in Modhera, Gujarat, India. At first glance, it appears to be a ceremonial water reservoir hub placed before the temple, dedicated to the solar deity Surya. However, a closer examination reveals that this monumental stepwell is far more than a simple water tank. It is a sophisticated architectural composition that combines geometry, hydraulic engineering, symbolic cosmology, and stone craftsmanship with a level of precision that continues to puzzle historians, archaeologists, and engineers. Built during the Solanki dynasty in the 11th century, the pool represents a remarkable achievement of ancient Indian architecture. Yet many aspects of its construction and design still raise questions that modern science struggles to fully answer. The entire structure of Surya Kund is organized around a complex geometric layout formed by countless descending steps that create a layered, almost fractal pattern of terraces. These steps cascade downward from all sides toward the rectangular water basin at the center, forming a symmetrical network of triangular and diagonal lines that appear almost mathematically programmed. When viewed from above, the design resembles an enormous stone mandala or a geometric puzzle carved into the earth. Every row of steps aligns with the others with astonishing accuracy, producing a sense of perfect balance and visual harmony. Achieving this level of symmetry with thousands of individual stone components would have required careful planning and precise measurement. Yet historians still debate what tools or surveying methods were used by the builders over 1,000 years ago to maintain such consistency across the entire structure. Among all the remarkable features of Surya Kund, perhaps the most astonishing is the system of stepped terraces constructed from thousands of carefully cut stone blocks that fit together with extraordinary precision. Each step in the descending terraces is formed by sandstone blocks that were carved and shaped to match one another so tightly that the joints between them are often barely visible. In many sections of the pool, the stones are fitted together without the use of mortar, relying entirely on the accuracy of the cuts and the weight distribution of the structure to hold them in place. This technique required not only advanced knowledge of stone carving, but also an understanding of structural stability. The stones had to be cut in such a way that each piece would lock into the surrounding blocks, preventing movement even under the pressure of water-shifting soil and centuries of weathering. What makes this engineering achievement particularly mysterious is the scale of the construction. Surya Kund contains hundreds upon hundreds of steps, arranged in repeating geometric sequences, and each one required multiple, precisely shaped blocks. The total number of stones used in the structure likely reaches into the thousands. To produce so many blocks with such consistent dimensions would have demanded a highly organized system of quarrying, measuring, cutting, and transportation. Yet archaeological evidence suggests that the builders relied primarily on relatively simple iron tools, chisels, and hammers. When examining the joints between many of the stones, modern researchers often find surfaces that are surprisingly flat and smooth, raising question about how such uniformity could have been achieved using the technology known to exist at the time. Equally intriguing is the way the step terraces distribute weight and structural pressure throughout the pool. Instead of relying on large monolithic walls to contain the water, the entire structure functions as a network of interlocking stone layers that gradually descend toward the central basin. Each level of steps acts as both a staircase and a stabilizing platform, spreading the load across the structure. This design reduces the risk of collapse and allows the reservoir to maintain stability even as water levels rise and fall. Modern engineers studying ancient stepwells have noted that this system effectively disperses hydrostatic pressure, preventing the walls from cracking or bowing outward. The remarkable durability of Surya Kund suggests that its designers possessed a deep understanding of how stone structures behave under environmental stress. Beyond its structural brilliance, the precision of the stonework also contributes to the pool's ability to manage water efficiently. The tight joints between the stones allow for controlled seepage and drainage, preventing excessive pressure from building up behind the walls. In effect, the entire structure functions as both a reservoir and a sophisticated filtration system. Rainwater entering the pool would slowly settle within the step terraces, while excess moisture could pass through microscopic gaps in the stonework, maintaining the integrity of the structure. Such hydraulic awareness implies that the builders understood not only architecture, but also the behavior of groundwater and seasonal water cycles. Another fascinating element surrounding Surya Kund is the presence of numerous miniature shrines positioned along the stepped terraces. Scholars have counted more than 100 small sanctuaries integrated into the design of the pool. These shrines were dedicated to various Hindu deities and served as ritual stations where pilgrims could pause before entering the main temple complex. The placement of these shrines appears to follow symbolic patterns tied to cosmological beliefs, reinforcing the idea that Surya Kund was not simply a water reservoir, but a sacred transitional space connecting the physical and spiritual realms. Descending the steps toward the water may have represented a symbolic journey from the earthly world toward purification and enlightenment. The alignment of the pool with the nearby Sun Temple also raises intriguing questions about astronomical planning. The temple itself was carefully oriented so that the rising sun would illuminate the inner sanctum during specific times of the year. Surya Kund sits directly in front of this temple along the same central axis, suggesting that the pool may have played a role in the ceremonial experience of solar worship. Some researchers have speculated that reflections on the surface of the water could have enhanced the visual effect of sunlight entering the temple, though this theory remains difficult to prove. Nevertheless, the integration of waterstone geometry and solar alignment hints at a sophisticated understanding of both ritual symbolism and environmental observation. Despite centuries of exposure to weather earthquakes and human activity, much of Surya Kund still stands remarkably intact. The precision of the stone blocks and the layered design of the terraces have allowed the structure to withstand the passage of time with minimal structural failure. Even today, visitors descending the ancient steps can see how tightly the stones remain fitted together, a testament to the skill of the craftsmen who built them. This durability raises an enduring mystery. How did builders working more than a millennium ago achieve such technical mastery using tools and methods that appear relatively simple by modern standards? The Modhera Sun Pool continues to fascinate scholars because it exists at the intersection of engineering art and spirituality. Its geometric complexity, its thousands of carefully fitted stone blocks, and its integration with religious architecture demonstrate a level of sophistication that challenges modern assumptions about ancient construction techniques. While historians attribute its creation to the advanced architectural traditions of medieval India, many details of its construction remain uncertain. The precise methods used to measure, cut, and assemble the stones have not been fully reconstructed, leaving open the possibility that ancient builders possessed practical knowledge that has since been lost. In this way, Surya Kund stands not only as a monument of devotion, but also as a silent record of forgotten engineering skills, inviting each generation of researchers to reconsider what ancient civilizations may have truly been capable of achieving. What do you think about the engineering mystery of Surya Kund? Did ancient builders truly rely only on simple tools, or did they possess advanced knowledge that has been lost to history? Share your thoughts in the comments below.